Doing. Okay, so we started to record this, and LeJean and Kent, for your purposes, so what we'll do is we'll save the recording and with the county, and then they'll give us a link for you guys to be able to grab it. So probably not until tomorrow. So why don't we get started? I have to do a roll call, and if you want, I can do that. Being like I see everybody on the screen and locally.
That'd be great. Thank you, Pat.
Okay, so I'm just going to say who I know is here and who isn't here, so you guys have to say yay. So Carol Falls here, Glenn Hoxie's present. We have Forenza, Brian Taylor, Bob Morris, Jeff Morris, Arnold Whitridge, Ross Molyneux, Randy Spencer, Amelia Flights, Pat Frost, and Sarah Supaha. It presents a quorum quandary for us because we are missing. Yeah, but she's not a RAC member.
We're missing 3 out of Group C, aren't we, Pat?
Yeah, we're missing Sonny Hayward, Bob Borden, and Nick Gillette. Nick just became a new dad. So, so I think we don't have a quorum, so we can't really take action. But that I don't think prohibits us from having discussions and setting ourselves up for next week's meeting. Would you agree with that, Tara, as GFO?
I would agree with that. I think as long as we're not voting, taking any action, as you said, but to kind of run through where we are and do some information sharing, I think we're okay.
Okay.
LeJean, would you concur with that?
Yes, but I would ask one question. If we went ahead as planned to do a ranking of the projects based off of category, the committee members in category A, B, and C, is ranking in itself going to create an issue without a quorum?
I think as long as we don't act on that, I think if we organize ourselves around being able to make a recommendation to a quorumed group next Monday, I would think we'd be okay. We're not really voting. We're just saying this is kind of a status that we would like to bring forward next time.
So,
and as the chair, I can just kind of present that, to the RAC next week.
Pat, I agree with.
Sorry, I think as long as we allow that Group C to perhaps spend some time at the beginning of the meeting before we move past whatever Group C would have produced. I think that's important to allow a quorum of Group C to at least meet before we move forward with any sure. Final not recommendations, but any final rankings coming out of that group. I would be comfortable with that. So I think we can move forward with what we have with the understanding that the beginning of the next meeting, before it moves forward any further, that once they have at least 3 people from that group, that they have a chance to look at what they came up with and prior to us moving forward. That works for me. Pat, if you think that can work for you, I think we could probably sure. handle that.
Yeah, I think that works fine.
Okay.
And I'd ask the group, but the group can't vote on it anyway. So go ahead, Forenza has a question.
So does anyone know where Sonny is?
Carol delivered
the
packet to him.
His wife has been ill. So
I mean, I guess something we could do is we could call him and see if he wanted to join us by phone. But it wasn't like he didn't know the meeting was happening. Why don't we just kind of proceed as is and cross that bridge later?
Okay.
Okay. So Tara, on the agenda, second agenda item is comments from the DFO. Do you have anything in particular you want to comment on?
You know, it's funny this happened early because we may have to talk about how we're going to deal with any potential conflicts. So unless that's its own separate agenda item, I apologize, I don't have the agenda open in front of me. I was on some calls right before this.
We don't have a specific agenda item on how to deal with conflict of interest.
Okay. So one of the challenges may be for that group C. I think that as we work through rankings, I'm not too concerned about conflicts, but as we move into, let's say that I was a voting person and the plan that came up was for the national forests for my district. So then there's I really can't, I'm in public service, so that's not a good example. But if I had an organization that would benefit from my vote on the committee, there's a potential that there could be a conflict. So what I was thinking was I have no problems with us all moving through the rankings. I think that's fine. But I think when it comes to a formal vote, if some of the committee members actually have proposals that are in that would benefit their organization, that they may need to, they should think about it. We should have them abstain from that vote. Now that'll be a challenge for the group C because we're already down one almost all the time. And so if somebody has to abstain from voting in group C, that may be a challenge, but that's kind of one of my concerns, and that I was thinking through is how to address those kinds of issues. Because one thing I know about Trinity County is y'all are on every board, every committee, everything. It's the same people everywhere, which shows a lot about your heart and your commitment to the natural resources in Trinity County. But I think that may make the most amount of sense. But since we're not voting, what do you think, Pat?
No, I've been mulling over conflict of interest ever since I saw the list of RAC members, and I think it's very doable. But you're right; we're going to have to be very thoughtful and cautious about individuals having to declare conflicts when their organization is benefiting financially.
I will identify that I do not intend to plan for any of the TCRCD or the Ascend Wilderness.
Right.
I will abstain from all of those votes.
And so it'll just, I think we talked about this last time. So the earlier RAC, and Arlo will correct me if I'm wrong, I know, that we came up with an overall ranking, if you want to call it that, or list of projects that we wanted to fund and dollar amounts we wanted to give them. And we had one motion and 1 second and 1 vote over the whole package. And I don't think that that'll be something that we can do with the composition of our RAC membership. And now knowing what the proposals are that we have before us, we're going to have to break things apart into smaller pieces to vote on, so that somebody can abstain and not have everybody who has to abstain on one big motion, and then not have 3 members in each committee. And we're going to have to get on. Nick will be good for next meeting. I'm sure. But yeah, the Watershed Center has proposals, so we'll have to. Group C will be a trickier one, unless we can make sure we get Sonny and/or Bob Board. Bob.
An RCD has proposals that will be in conjunction with the Watershed Center also. So it's not just the face of it, there's behind the scenes potential conflicts as well.
Right,
and potential vice versa.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we'll, I appreciate, the transparency, and that's really all we're talking about, that, it's the appearance of a conflict, because you all have a remarkable amount of integrity, and I'm thrilled with this group. I love working with you guys. We just want to make sure we're super transparent about how we got to the decisions we got to, so that we so that we can avoid even the appearance. So that's really what we're talking about. It's I'm not specifically worried about any one person. It's just making sure that everything's super transparent and very above board, and nobody can get, go to the store and get accused of favoring their own project. So I think we can come up with a pretty solid way to do that, and we'll work through that as we start to get where we're going. The last comment I had for the opening remarks is I apologize for being a little bit out of communication. I was sick again last week, and but I understand I owe Lillian a debt of gratitude. I think she stayed at work really late making all the copies. I'm hoping everyone got the hard copies that they were promised. So I wanted to make sure, Pat, that everyone had been able to pick up the hard copies that wanted them.
I believe everybody did, and anybody who didn't has them now.
Yeah, there's
Bob Borden's copy.
That's probably this one here. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, that's all I had for the opening comments. Again, want to thank everybody for taking time, a lot of time, and looking forward to, Pat, I want to thank you. A lot of the advertisement had a lot to do with you, specifically getting it in the paper, and that we received as many proposals and projects as we did is a testament to your outreach. Also want to thank Jill for having her town hall address that the RAC part was open and that we're accepting projects. I think the fact that we got this many for this dollar amount really is a huge step in the right direction. I'm super excited about it. So thank you both for that. And that's what I had to open it up.
Okay, great, thank you. LaJohn, do you have anything in particular to bring up at this point?
No, I'm just curious to see how we can make this breaking ourselves into groups A, B, and C work out in this dual setting that we have right here, in person and virtual. Yeah. So I don't want to take any time from that. I'll second what Tara just said. It's been awesome working with everybody up to this point, and I'm excited to see how we move forward spending this money.
So Glenn, you've got your virtual hand up.
Yeah. I don't know if this is the time to bring this. First of all, I want to thank LaJohn for getting all the stuff out electronically, and also the hard copies. That must have been a monumental task, and I'm looking through it and zipping everything. And I really appreciate the spreadsheet that allows us to refer to all of them, so we aren't going through all these sheets. But I think there may be some cells that got switched. What is the best way for me to follow along here, do you think? I don't know. I mean, I imagine we're going to start breaking down these proposals, right?
Yeah, I guess my thought, and I was going to ask the group, was those of us who got hard copies, so, the old school people have something, a book, and it has a whole list, of all the proposals. I was just going to start with number one and work our way down and see what comments, questions, thoughts we had on them, and try to get written down any questions that we have for the authors of the proposals, so that we can actually get those questions to them this week, so that they could answer the questions next week, unless somebody is on the call who can answer the question. Or have to be, who can answer questions directly.
That'll work for me. I think there may be a time or two I might have to raise my hand and get clarification, but
yeah, no, that's fine.
Okay.
Never done this before, so we'll adapt as we go. LaJohn, you have your little yellow.
So since Glenn kind of brought us into that territory, I'll continue that conversation. Maybe you have a plan for how we're going to go about reviewing these. I would hope that everybody coming into this meeting has had a chance to look through them a little bit and to get a sense of how you're prioritizing them, maybe prioritizing, ranking, whatever term you want to use for that. So that as we do talk about them, we can start to, as group A, B, and C, put down in writing how the groups are viewing those individual projects so that we can start to rank them all against one another. So Pat, I'm just curious, you were just mentioning that we're going to review this all today as a large group. Do you plan on doing breakouts with group category A, B, and C? And then I just want to really nail down what is the end goal of today, and then what is the goal for our next meeting next week, Monday, and then what's the final goal on the December meeting. I believe, from my 2 cents before I throw it over to you, Pat, I believe today we're trying to get a ranked system out. Group A, B, and C each have a ranking of each of the proposals. Next week, any proposals that we want to have presentations?
Let me interrupt you, Lejean. I don't think we envision the groups A, B, and C doing independent reviews and ranking. That's just the way the orders in which we have to vote. We have to get 3 votes in each group for something to pass. What I would hope is we'd be much more of a consensus-driven kind of process. We're going to discuss things today. We're going to have questions because people, you know, left some parts of the applications blank, or there's conflicting information between one part of an application and the budget, things like that, and not really. I mean, it'd be nice, you know, if we, you know, it would be nice to get through all 29, but I don't know that we will do that. So I'm willing to stay here until we do. But anyway, so I don't see it as a ranking, a firm ranking kind of process.
Understood, and thank you for that. I'm asking partially because I want to know, for my role as the RAC coordinator, are we planning on having presentations at the next meeting? And if so, I need to know who we're inviting in to make a presentation.
So I think we'll figure that out as we go through the proposals. But okay. The question, yeah, I think to the question of do we want, and presentation is maybe a more formal term than I would. I mean, I'm not looking for 15-minute presentations with 5 slides. You know, not you know, as we approach Thanksgiving, I guess I could say, I'm not looking for 27 8x10 color glossies with photos and with circles and arrows and descriptions on the back. I'm not looking for that. I think we just want to be able to understand the proposal.
Just a question and answer, a discussion.
Yeah, question and answer. And what I'm hoping to get out of today is for the proposals we get through, questions that we can send to them ahead of time so that we can be efficient next week. So I have Arnold, Carol, and Amelia in that order. Arnold.
I'm a happy guy. I was going to object to A, B, and C having to come up with a group plan, but that's already been disposed of.
Okay, Carol.
So I'm uncomfortable with the term ranking. I don't know that we can get that detailed until we get questions answered. You know, I'm kind of like, have a lot of questions about these things, so how can I rank them? I think maybe my preference today would be at least more like prioritizing, like high, medium, low, or ones that we really like, ones we kind of like, ones we just have a lot of questions and maybe we don't like. Just some general kind of prioritization, not so much the ranking. And then I really agree. I think we need to figure out what questions we have about each of the proposals so that we can tell whoever we invite to come talk about them what questions we have, so they can answer those. They're not going to get blindsided by us, you know, like asking them stuff they weren't prepared to answer. So that would be my suggestion.
Okay, Amelia.
I have 2 concerns. Lejean, number 1, I was wondering if you got my email that was sent late last night about documents missing from the TCRCD applications. So then I'm just wondering if there were other documents that were omitted from the packet in general for other applications. And then number two, I am concerned about the idea of today taking action on identifying any applications that we don't plan to invite people back on. I don't think that we can do that today. So if we're planning to set a schedule for next week, I would recommend that we pick big blocks and maybe try to knock out all the Watershed Center and all the RCD ones next week. I think that we could agree upon, but some of the smaller ones that we may not be as comfortable or supportive of the applications, that we can't not invite them is my point. And maybe we look at saying that we would invite them at the later meeting once we can actually vote and say we don't want to see this one or we do want to see this one. So that's my concern there.
Okay. Bob.
I don't know the appropriate time to ask these questions. I have a couple comments and a few questions, some of which would help at least myself frame what we're doing tonight. So can you just tell me if we're going to cover it later and stop me if as I go?
I mean, yeah, ask your question, I'll tell you.
First, I wanted to thank Lejean and had to have had help. It couldn't have been a single effort, but this is quite a monumental composition, and it was very organized, very helpful. So thank you for that. This is the part that would help me frame my thinking some. I've heard, so please correct me if I'm wrong, that we have $1.25 million to allocate and $1.5 million asked. Is that accurate?
1.8.
Yeah. I think it's 1.8 or 1.85 in ask and 1.25.
1.125.
1.125.
I think.
$1.25 million that we have on hand, and 1.8 approximate was asked of the committee.
1.25. Anyway, that helps to me to frame what needs to be winnowed.
Right. So about $500,000, $550,000.
Next, I had heard that things had to be NEPA ready, and there's 3 asks from RAC for NEPA money. And I don't know if that's in arrears or if it's yet to be spent.
No, we as a group decided before that things didn't need to be NEPA ready, that they had to be NEPA ready by September of next year.
And can RAC funds be spent on NEPA?
And then we could potentially fund NEPA or planning, as using our allocation of funding.
Next, number 24, Weaver Basin Trail System improvements. There's a whole section after it of the Weaverville Community Forest Fuels and Recreation Project. And I was wondering why that's even included in that.
We could get to that when we get to the proposal, but I think the quick answer is that's the NEPA decision memo, that it covered both the fuels work and the recreation work.
That makes sense. Another one we can cover when we get to it. The last one is kind of a general thing, and I don't mean to pick on anybody, but I noticed that all of the RCD asks are approximately 20% grant administration ask.
Wait until we get to their proposals.
The first one then.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it. Thanks.
Okay. Amelia.
I was wondering how the RAC in the past has dealt with applications that were proposed that didn't include match. If you helped them and built match into their proposal, or if because they did not include match in their original proposal that they were.
It's not required.
It's not required. We didn't. I think the RAC in the past, and Arnold can kind of use his recollections. I think the RAC would look more favorably on proposals that had good solid match, but I'm pretty sure we've funded projects that were slim to no match also.
Okay, so the column C, the matching funds, that the minimum requirement of 20% match, that's not actually factual in this sheet that was provided.
I think that the form, what that talks to is that if you're the mechanism that you're going to use to get your money is a cooperative agreement or a grant, then there is a requirement that's not a RAC requirement for that 20% match.
Okay, I would say that was not made clear during the proposal
So,
process.
Talk to the Washington office.
We did mention at one of the meetings that match wasn't required.
Yeah, but there are other regulatory requirements that the Forest Service has, you know, for different types of agreements.
And I would say for the group, you know, don't be surprised as we come into these kind of things. You know, we haven't been active with the RAC for a few years. Some of the forms are post-dated. You know, we had that Ranger checklist versus you don't need the checklist. So I think one of the things that we should come out of this with, and LaJean and I have already talked about it, is kind of a clearer messaging for the next time. You know, I don't expect it to be super smooth this time because there was a gap, right, from when we've been doing this. So we'll look at the notes, and I know that there's some things that we need to clean up before we do this again next year. The good news is it looks like there'll be the funding will be there for us to continue to do this. So that's a good thing. We're taking good notes on this kind of thing and making sure we clean up some of these little, not curveballs, at least a little bit of confusion here and there. So just wanted to throw that out there.
Okay, so I have Sarah and LaJean and then Dylan, and I'm not sure how we want to approach people who aren't RAC members at this point as far as comments, but Sarah.
So I just wanted to be clear on our process for today. Are we, you know, before we even get to bringing people in, are we going to go through each of the proposals tonight and review concerns or missing items? And if so, are we just starting at the top and going down the list, or are we looking at the different project types together, you know, such as all the, I don't know, trails as one thing, you know, are we grouping those together to look at? So I just want to be clear on our process so we all know where we're starting tonight and what we hope to accomplish today.
Okay, well, my thought was, yes, try to get through all of them today. And because they are the people who have the hard copies, they're organized as number 1 through number 29, that we probably use that as our process, kind of work our way down, though it would have been handy to have had them organized by type. You know, that there's some value to talking about all the weed projects at one time, but that's a lot more flipping around through the pages. We can kind of just see how it goes. But my thought was just start with number 1 and work our way down, if that's okay with the group.
So then all those concerns and questions people have about each one, we can just go and talk about those as we go.
As we go, yeah. LaJean.
Yeah, this is the last thing I'll say unless somebody has a direct question, because I want to allow the committee to get to the review. But Amelia asked a question of me, so I just want to respond to that. The letter that you're referring to, which was Tara's letter of support, it was sent in the email to everybody. Whether that made it into the physical packets, I am unsure, but it was sent to everybody, so everybody does have a version of it. One reason it might not have gotten into the printing is because I believe they have 13 projects. I didn't want to put that letter in each of those project folders so that it got replicated 13 times for each member of the RAC, and just created a redundant amount of paperwork. So it is there. I think every committee member, if you're not aware of it, there is a letter of support for every one of the Trinity County RCD projects. So if you do not have it, let me know and I'll send it to you.
Okay.
Is that fair, Amelia?
Yeah, I don't think it made it in the hard copy, but yes.
It did not make it in the hard copy.
Okay, well, I apologize about that.
Okay.
And it's not required.
Right. Okay, so looking at our agenda, I have a couple of just general comments. Oh, Randy.
In going through these, I keep running across the box marked, this is a continuing funding thing. Does that affect what we're deciding?
I mean, multi-year or single year? It could play into your decision making.
But it doesn't necessarily affect the monetary decisions or anything like that.
I mean, as we start to go through them, it might. I mean, you might say, you know, we got to somehow come up with saving $500,000. So one way to, one strategy would be to take proposals and say, this is a 2-year proposal, and say, how about if we give you 1 year's worth of money? And we did that as you go through all the proposals, you might add up $200,000 or $300,000 of savings. So that's something we can talk about, but it's okay to have a multi-year proposal. There's some value in that.
The money that they're asking covers 2 years?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's my assumption.
That's the point I was unclear on the multi-year ones. Is it that amount per year, or that covers 2 years?
The way I interpret it is we're asking for 2 years worth of money. Jeff.
Kind of a corollary to that, there's a bit of an assumption here, but assuming that the Roads and Schools is reauthorized for another 3 years, which it looks like it's going to be, something for folks to keep in mind too. There may be opportunities to fund NEPA for a project that then we'd potentially later fund in future years too. So thinking through that sequencing also, I think, probably important.
Okay. Ross, Brian, I can't see you guys over your screens. So anything, got anything?
We can see the whole world right here. We just can't see each other.
Okay. So
doesn't mean that Ross is running.
A couple of quick general comments also. One, my thank you to Jill Cox for not only giving up her monthly town hall meeting slot for us to use this room, and for her to be the master of the keyboards here tonight, running things. I wanted to thank her for that. I wanted to thank Amelia and Carol for providing snacks. So people who are at home, I know if your screen goes blank for a little bit, you're probably getting, and I think Glenn is consuming something right now. So French fries or something like that. So people in the room, feel free to just get up and get things as you go along. You know, it'll get us to the end of the meeting probably with better blood sugar levels. And then people have alluded to it, but nobody has just flat out said it. So the infrastructure bill that the House of Representatives passed last Friday evening, and that is expected to be signed by the president this week, I believe, included a reauthorization of secure rural schools for 3 additional years. So the reality is that this is our first time out of the gate as a RAC, but we've got more years of allocations to work our way through over the next 3 years, or at least until our appointments are expired. But anyway, so that's good news. So it does give us the ability to say, this is what we envisioned for this funding right now, but there's more coming down the pike. So I think that's a positive thing for us to look at. So one kind of ministerial act that we can't take up tonight. So we'll just bypass agenda item number 4, which is approving the minutes, because we don't have a quorum. And so with that, I think we kind of launch into our discussions of projects. And if it's okay, if people think it's okay, we'll just start with number 1, and I'll read out what the project is so the people who are looking at them digitally can find them. Yes, Amelia.
Is Kent taking the notes on the questions that we have?
I'm going to write questions also, but
Okay.
there also is a recording. So the first project that was, we can spend as much or as little time on proposals as we want. Number one is Ascend Wilderness Experience Youth and Adult Stewardship Projects.
Oh,
So
that's all different on what.
That's not number one.
It's
So-
in alphabetical order in the printed packages.
Oh. Okay.
okay, so there. So Lejean, make a note.
It's good to know. That's what happens when you got multiple chefs in the kitchen.
Yeah, it's okay. Long
So
as
maybe for each one, if we just said, are there concerns?
Are-
Are there
yeah.
questions?
So are there, so for the Ascend Wilderness project, are there questions or concerns, things you want raised next week?
And
Amelia?
it's $59,000 over 2 years.
That is project 26 in the electronic files.
Okay.
Yeah, so one thing I'd like to do is as we get to one, let's go ahead and make sure we refer to the project, the spreadsheet with the project number so that we're all looking at the same one. We'll have a minute, wait till everyone's kind of on the same sheet of music, and then we'll start. So it sounds like we're on project 26, I think I heard on the spreadsheet. The youth and adult, yep, that one, youth and adult stewardship project. Is that the one we said?
Yeah. And
Okay.
it's number one in the printed packets.
Copy.
Okay, Amelia.
Yes, I would have a question about how they got to 3.5 as their jobs generated in full-time equivalents when their salaries is $22,000, and that's not nearly prevailing wage. So I am concerned about that FTE as being 3.5. So saying that it's 3.5 years of staff full-time funding with this contribution.
The 22,000 is in from RAC, but there's matching funds for salaries in other columns. So if you add them up, it would be a different total.
But still $34,000 is not 3.5 years of salaries at a full-time 40 hours a week at 52 weeks a year. I mean, that's barely 1 year. And that's if you're paying them less than $20 an hour.
Well, you don't have to pay prevailing wage, right?
Correct.
Yeah, it's not prevailing wage.
You just had to pay minimum wage, I guess.
Right.
I would question if that for 3.5 years would meet minimum wage.
Okay, so that's a good question.
Okay.
A follow-up to that question. I have a follow-up to that question. Or
okay.
So when I saw FTE, I thought, so when I saw 3.5 FTE, for example, I thought that was 3.5 full-time employees.
Yeah, I think that's what that means, Glenn.
Okay. I thought you said it meant 3.5 years. Maybe I misunderstood what Amelia was saying, or who was speaking last. Okay.
Arnold.
I like to say on this one, for my own purposes, I divided them into different categories: trails, plants, good plants and bad plants. I put them together, fuels. And one of the things I liked about the AWE proposal is I put it in trails, but it could also work under education. So it serves two purposes in my mind, and two purposes that are actually of interest to me. So I like it for that reason.
I agree.
Bob.
So besides being close to my heart and liking this proposal for that reason, I was impressed with the amount of matching funds that apply to it. I know it's not a requirement, but it still shows me there's a lot of buy-in.
Yeah, and I think early on, you know, when we were talking about what are the kinds of things that are important to us, match was something we said we would take into account. So. Okay, anything else?
I think it's going to be desperately needed as we keep having wildfires in the wilderness, and seeing a youth group getting interested in this, I think is a great thing.
So if we're not ranking projects, but if we're doing like a kind of a higher
sense
priority,
of how do we like it,
medium, low.
Yeah, so that was going to be my, my next question was, so just what's the general sense of the group as to the likability, of this project?
I saw Sarah raised her hand at some point.
Yeah, I just wanted to agree with Arnold, because I think we get a good bang for our buck, if you want to use that term, because we get 2 for 1. I like the fact that we are getting something done for fuels reduction, creating a fire barrier, but also working with youth, helping them understand the importance of that and getting them educated, maybe even involved in future careers in that area. So I like this one. I would put it in that really, really like pile if we're doing 3 piles.
Yeah. Ross.
I like this category too, because at a trail conference I went to, they talked about if we don't get this younger generation to buy into the wilderness, the wilderness won't mean anything to them, and we're apt to lose it. We almost lost it in the last administration. Well, it's got to mean something to them, and especially kids inner city or something that wouldn't get a camping or a trail building experience any other way. This is I think it's of prime importance to me.
Right, and the development of a work ethic. I think that's important here. Getting these folks out there not only to look at the wilderness, but developing that work ethic to do that, and the educational background behind it.
Pat, do you want to see like a show of hands for where to place?
So without it being a vote, because we can't vote on anything. So people who have a sense that this is as Sarah said, the really like it kind of column, kind of raise their hands. Okay, so that.
Hey, Pat, one thing we might want to do as we go through this too is on the top of this form for me, I wrote education, fuels, and trails. So that later if I have to compare, is this a weeds one like we talked about? Is this a botany one? Is it a fuels one? Is it a whatever? So as we go through them, I'm just kind of labeling, and just so happens this one's kind of a tweener that seems to meet a lot of those different categories. Yeah. So just an idea, if people have an idea of what category they think that this particular project is in, and if later we have to compare it to something, it may be worth it to make a note now if the group thinks so. It's just an idea.
Yeah, I mean, I did that as I was going along also. LeJean.
So I'm gonna tag on to what Tara said there. My request is, as we go through these, since we're going through these individually, can each committee member here, whether it's on the Excel sheet, if you have that in front of you, or on their paperwork, if you can rank it between 1 and 5, 1 being low.
So I know you're really into the numerical ranking, but the group is opposed to that, LeJean. So
at this time,
they're comfortable with we really, really like it. We kind of like it. We don't like it.
Whatever words or numbers you want to use, that's fine by me. But if we can all capture that, that's what I'm getting at.
I'm putting 2+ marks by this one for me on the list. I'll put 1+ mark if it's good, and I'll put a negative if I don't think it's good.
Perfect. So I think what LeJean has run into, and what we've run into with some of the other racks is, say for instance that we decide that we're going to put, don't like, and like. Well, being the people that we are, everyone wants to have a D and a B in there. So they'll say, they put in a kind of like, or a like plus. So he's just asking that, be consistent with whatever mode you choose, because inevitably if you give people the choice, some of them will, we all grade differently. Sarah, you know this better than anybody. People, some people It's not just okay, good or bad. There's always that, well, it's better than a like, but not a great. So just be consistent in your own. Yeah, exactly. So just be consistent. And then on the top of this form, so that we all talk apples and apples later, please make sure that your Resource Advisory Committee project number says 26. That way, when we all talk about this one, we'll all have the same number.
But one full-time equivalent. And so
okay.
Would be
sweet.
Okay.
A whole year funded for one person.
So on to the second one. So what number does the spreadsheet that all of us who have hard copies don't have? What number is the Bluebird Wildlife Enhancement Project?
17.
17. So number 17. So any comments, thoughts, questions on the Bluebird Wildlife Enhancement Project? Bob.
I'm not sure how much personal biases should be coming into this, but I've watched this project since its inception in the late 90s when they did the reconstruction of the ground there. And the consensus of the folks I've talked to on Canyon Creek, it's a complete waste of money, terrible design, just in terms of buy-in from the public that I've seen. And personally, what I think of what I've seen, I have a really hard time with this project, and to put more into it, I have a hard time with.
I had a question. So it said identify other sources of funding, and it's talking about using match from Caltrans in the TRMU, and I'm trying to figure out how Caltrans state money is a match for this. So it may be irrelevant. Maybe they just put that in there because they misunderstood the need for match, but I just didn't see how Caltrans factored into work up on Canyon Creek.
It could be mitigation work for a project somewhere else.
So that might be a question then?
So we
that would be a question.
It's a question that we will ask them to answer next time.
They do commonly do offsite mitigation.
So I had a question also because Arnold, maybe do you recall that we saw the Bluebird mine project in previous lives as RAC members?
Yeah, it might even be older than us.
I think it is older than us. But my question was, it talks about this is the second phase or a new phase. And my question is, was phase one successful?
That's a great question.
Yeah, was it completed? Or is this the same thing over again?
Right.
It's successful according to whom?
I just.
Well, we could at least get it from the proponents. And
yeah,
are they building on something that failed? Are they building on? Are they starting over? Are they have a better idea?
Is there an easy to access record of the old proposals?
No.
It's hidden. It's occult.
I mean, I don't want to get into a rant, but I will anyway. So I meticulously saved every single proposal, whether we funded them or not, from 2001 until 2016 at the RCD in binders. And the RCD did a digital version of everything through 2014 that they then gave to the Forest Service. And Lejean was unable to find any of that at the Forest Service, and the RCD is unable to find anything that I saved, these three big giant black binders at the RCD. So somewhere there is a record, and I can't believe the Forest Service has lost them. I just believe they just don't know where the last guy saved them.
That's a fair statement. 3 big black binders.
That's at the RCD.
Oh, so ours was.
Conference room flooded?
I'm sorry?
They could have been damaged when the conference room flooded.
I have no idea. They were in the district manager's bookcase for as long as I was with them.
If they're transmitted digitally from RCD, shouldn't there be a record of that?
It should be.
I'll look here too, Pat, in case we have some copies.
Yeah, oh yeah, because Jim was pretty good about keeping things for a long time too. Actually, there is on the hard drive, there is actually the RCD on their server actually does have a lot of the records.
I'll do some more digging too, Pat. Goodness knows we never throw anything away, so.
Yeah, I didn't mean to divert us from the Bluebird mine. Glenn.
Yeah, kind of back to the Bluebird mine. So what they're doing, they're going to plant trees, right? That's supposed to encourage bird life and restore habitat, right? Is that the fun? Is that what I've read about it? Am I missing anything or?
We'll be planting trees and shrubs, yeah. And then legume plugs.
Noxious weed removal.
And so I'm not sure who commented on, but they were, kind of somewhat disparaging about their track record. How is this? How are they missing the mark with some of the other, as compared to some other tree planting projects we're looking at? Are they just not spending the money wisely in the past, or is it?
Well, that's the question is, was the earlier effort successful?
Okay, that's a great way to kind of address the concerns, which were voiced. So okay, I think I got my question answered.
I guess my question is, was the earlier project done by the same proposing entity?
I don't even know that.
I wouldn't know.
And so was phase one successful, and who did phase one? My vague recollection is it was the Forest Service with the RCD helping.
Gabrielle from AmeriCorps from RCD was overseeing a lot of stuff there. If that helps you to recall. No.
So Randy, then Jeff.
One of my questions is all the stuff that they want to do, but it doesn't say anything about enhancing the Western pond turtle, and kind of why does the Western pond turtle need to be enhanced?
Species of concern.
To who?
U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service.
Well, there's a whole lot of things that they're doing that isn't good for the pond turtles. But anyway.
So we'll add that question of how does it help the Western pond turtle? Jeff.
Projects like this, a map or some kind of location would be good to have included.
My hard copy has a map.
No map in the digital package then, FYI.
I received a map.
Oh, I don't see it here.
The first, go to it. It's the first one. It just says Bluebird Wildlife Enhancement Map.
Oh, my apologies. I'll keep looking.
So any other questions for the proponents for next week? So we'll use Sarah's. Is this a project that people would like well enough that they would put 2+ marks?
Question marks.
Or is it a question mark? Just a question mark. Okay.
High, medium, or low was our original assessment. We need to stick with our original vote, which
we aren't
high,
voting.
medium, low.
So
2 pluses, plus or a negative.
We aren't voting.
We're not voting, but we were going to identify polling.
But people may be too uncertain at this point. There could be a question mark.
To be fair, to capture what I heard the group saying, Pat, is I heard there are a lot of questions. Yeah. And so it would be hard to evaluate this proposal based on the amount of questions. Like, was the first phase successful? That's a really important question. How will it benefit the pond turtle? That's a good question. I think those are excellent questions. So it would be hard to give this one a grade. If anything, it'd be an incomplete. So we just gotta get some more information, I think, before we decide on this one. If the group agrees with that general assessment of this particular proposal.
I think that's the sense I'm getting from looking at nods of heads.
Yeah, we could just call it too many questions. We can even create a category called too many questions.
Putting a question mark next to mine.
Incomplete.
Okay. So the next one that is on our yellow sheet, alphabetically in order, is Bowerman Barn signage and trail. What number is that on the spreadsheet? 24. So 24 for you digital folk.
And I just want to say on this one, it was one of the ones that was submitted on the PDF. So just a note that if you just followed the PDF fillable form, you are really restricted on how much information you could put in. So anyway.
Okay, so this
I
one.
propose to say we like this one regardless.
Yes. Amelia.
Is the NEPA already completed for the installation of the signs?
It doesn't require NEPA. It just is
it's an administrative
it's a 106 site.
Okay, so then it will have the letter to the file is completed. Okay. Thank you.
Randy.
I would like to just throw something out here. As a person that in the last 10 years or so has covered large parts of the United States, one of the things that I find irritating, because I like history and everything, is finding these signs in historical places that don't tell you anything, or the signs are faded out, nobody's taking care of them. I like this sort of thing. As a person that rents a cabin, I can send people down to this and they can come back knowing something.
Okay. So any questions that we want to add, or is I'm starting to hear a general two pluses. So is that kind of the consensus of the group at this point?
Do you want to see hands raised, or are you good?
Yeah,
with
I was going to say two pluses. Everybody kind of raise your hands. We're doing this just because you need to get exercise. We're not voting. Okay, so it's a 2-pluser.
We calling this, what category would you consider this? Education? Where would you lump this if you're going to lump it into a category?
I think education, and it does have a trails component.
Also tourism.
You know, I know that we need to consider these things individually, but my mind keeps going to there's one about Lassex Peak out on 36. There's some kiosks that they're going to redo. Too.
Kiosks on South Fork Mountain.
South Fork, yeah. Just want to say there's another one out there that's like this, I think.
Yeah.
That's all.
Copy.
I call them education.
Okay.
I think education. Okay.
Except all the gravel and all the trail improvements.
It did say trail improvements on the.
It does say trail improvements too.
I did both on mine. I just put education.
Is it enough money? I said my only question is what they're asking for enough money?
Good question.
It's explained in there, the costs.
We have to assume they asked for enough.
The sign costs $135 plus tax. The gravel is $850 for 2 transfer loads.
Okay.
It sounds
really like we're gaining traction. You guys are doing great.
You need to speak up enough that people can hear.
Copy.
I didn't hear. I couldn't hear what
it just sounds good.
Okay.
It's good bang for the buck.
Okay, so the next one on the alphabetical list is Coffee Creek Narrow Section Improvement Project. What number is that on the spreadsheet?
28.
28. Okay, so what are folks' thoughts, questions for this one? Being that's in your neck of the woods?
As a person that's climbed all over this area and spent a lot of time on Coffee Creek Road, I have a problem with this. I don't think the proposal covers what the problem is, or we're going to solve it and probably create more. The hillside is sliding. There are cracks that you can lose Volkswagens in a mile up the hillside. Coffee Creek is undercutting the whole thing. On top of that, a couple of years ago, we had the federal highway people out, and they did a whole bunch of talking, and they came to the conclusion that the #1 priority they had was redoing Coffee Creek Road as a 2-lane paved road to the county line. It just seems to me that the money that we're putting into this, or they're asking for, is kind of a waste of time and money. Continually move. Who's going to maintain it? That's not in here. I agree it needs to be done, but I don't think the money they're asking for, the engineering or the research that they've done is adequate.
So this one, my question was, would it be worthwhile investment for the RAC to consider just funding the design part? You know, just, you know, not funding the actual implementation, but actually just looking at the design and potentially NEPA, you know, just the, like Randy says, I mean, is this the right thing to do or not? Anyway, that was my.
Okay. Arnold, you were raising your hand.
My feeling is that I'm not enthusiastic about spending RAC money on county roads. There's one county road proposal to clear brush off the end of Guy Covington Road, and I consider that enough of a fuels value that I don't count it the same. But we have two rather big, in fact, this one is maybe two of the biggest proposals in the whole batch are for county roads, and I don't like the idea. I think the both ideas might be good, not for RAC funding in my mind.
Anybody? Brian? You
agree with what Arnold said, 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things you have to remember is over the last few years, the federal government has spent a few $1 million replacing bridges on Coffee Creek Road to an extreme. I don't know if you're aware of the new Coffee Creek Bridge up by Hardscrabble Creek or another one on Adams Creek. I mean, these are 1.5-lane urban bridges. And the first one on Coffee Creek is a hazard, actually. I don't think we need to spend the money. I'm really.
So I think I'm kind of hearing, so how about, I'm thinking we can raise our hands and stretch our muscles a little bit on a negative on this one. Is that kind of how many people are in think that this is not a project they want to?
Yeah, and I would encourage also, if we're gonna do the thumbs down, some communication back to the proponents about some why and some context around that.
Yeah, I've written some notes to be
well, and pursuant to Amelia's earlier comment, I feel that any proponent of any of these 29 should be advised that they could come and answer questions next time.
Exactly.
And give an argument. So I'm not considering exiling them forever from any consideration, but that, it's fair to warn them how we're leaning or how we're recommending that the RAC lean when it has a quorum.
So Forenza.
Yeah, just reminding everyone that this isn't the full, no, this isn't our vote. This is just this is what we think this belongs for now.
Also,
because we don't have a quorum.
Just FYI, I have met David. He's the deputy engineer. He's been doing it for less than a month in Trinity County. He walked in just before Coffee Creek Road blew up, and this was all dumped on him.
Yeah, David's been with the county a little while with the planning department. And I think before that with the Northwest California Resource Conservation and Development Council. Yep. So he's okay. So the next one on our alphabetical list is community chipping, which is what number digitally? 9.
It is number 9.
Okay, Bob.
So this is the first RCD proposal, and I think it's a great service that they offer. I think it's wonderful what they do, but it's that 19.4% grant admin, and it references NICRA 24.55%. Somebody explain that to me. So
that's our NICRA rate. It's our administrative funding that we are allowed to accrue on any federal contracts at 24.55%.
So that's not required, that's the maximum?
Yes.
And NICRA stands for?
Pat, help me out. What does the NICRA stand for?
National Index.
So essentially what it is essentially is every year agencies, Watershed Center probably has to do the same thing, is they have to file with what's called their cognizant agency, which is their federal agency that they get the most federal money from. They have to submit a report to them describing their indirect costs, the costs that can't be assigned to projects directly. And that agency then the Forest Service or BLM calculates the indirect rate that they're allowed to charge to keep themselves whole.
Which in actuality, our real value is over 30%. We have kept it at 24.55 for this fiscal year to not have as many issues. So we're actually still losing money here and there.
So this is at the beginning where I had a comment, I was saving it for the first RCD project. I think all the RCD projects are great, so please don't get me wrong. I'm just looking at the dollars spent on the ground versus administrative costs, and they're higher by a lot than anybody else's in the requests that we have before us. 2 to 8% is kind of what I saw generally for all the others, and 20% approximately for RCD is a red flag to me.
Okay.
So I kind of agree with Bob. I really, this is a program I love, the community chipping program. But all the RCD projects, it seems like they picked a number, like nice round numbers, 75,000, 100,000, and then they back out the administrative costs, and then they just divvy that up with, you know, whatever is left over into salaries and stuff like that. And so it seems like they could have more justification for, you know, the numbers that they backed out, like equipment rental. What kind of equipment rental? I would just, when they come, I would ask them, what are you renting equipment for in the community chipping program? Because you have all the chippers and stuff. And so I'm just curious what.
We charge a daily use fee for each chipper and each chainsaw. Chainsaws are.
So you're not renting equipment. Okay, so, but I mean, I don't want you to answer the questions now, but I'm just saying $6,000 to rent equipment. I'm like, you know, is that you're renting your own equipment? Or do you already have?
For use of their equipment. That makes total sense.
They have to replace that piece of equipment someday.
That makes total sense to me. It's just the grant ad.
So they have to charge for it.
So,
but that, I don't want to answer that now. I'm just saying, I just.
You would like an explanation.
Yes. I mean, depreciation is different than equipment rental, right? You're depreciating your equipment.
You're renting equipment. One of them for tax reasons. The other one is you got to charge for the piece of equipment, you got to maintain it, and you got to replace it when it's wore out.
Okay, so then.
I'll ask that question. So I think Tara was trying to jump in.
Yeah, sorry. So I think it sounded to me, just listening to the group, that there was a lot of support for the program itself. We just sounds like the group was looking for some clarification on the expenses on the financial worksheet. So that seems totally appropriate, especially, you know, given we know we're starting with more requests and we have money. So that seems like a very legitimate. Both of those seem to be true. The project itself seems to be very supported by this group, with just some additional answers on some of the expenses shown on the analysis worksheet. Is that capturing what you guys are saying appropriately?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
And then Forenza, did you have?
I think my question flew away in the wind.
Okay, that's okay.
So I suggest we put a Q for question mark on that one and come back to it later.
Well, I just had minor questions. I think overall the group's been pretty.
I think Bob's
supportive.
question was maybe.
And my question, it's less specific would be better answered to me. I'd just like to understand how the Watershed Center can do 2% for admin costs and RCD 20%. I just like to understand the difference for justification.
Yeah. And I've got a question to try to get that answered. But to our hand raising stretches, what is our? I'm hearing strong support for the project. There are enough questions about the financial side that it's a 1+ versus a 2+ at this point.
No, I think it's 2+.
Okay.
You know, a lot of them I have little nitpicky questions, and and that might decide how much money we actually give them.
Gotcha.
But the project as a whole, I think, should move forward. Even maybe they get less money or more money or whatever.
Okay, so Jack LaLanne would say it's time to stretch our arms. So for 2+, those stretching their arms up for this one.
2 pluses and questions.
Yeah.
I can do that.
Yeah.
That's right.
And Pat, I went ahead and labeled this one fuels reduction on my sheet. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah.
Yep. Abby.
Okay, so the next one
Is our number 6, which is on the spreadsheet, some other number, Forest Ecosystem Health and Resiliency Project. What number is that? 23? Okay.
And this is noxious weeds.
Yeah, this one, I have to say that I had I want to call a truth in packaging question, but I was expecting something about trees and forest, and mostly got let's deal with the weeds, which is a forest resiliency issue, but it just kind of caught me off guard.
I have a question about why they all want to get rid of all these, but they don't mention sweet peas. Nobody seems to want to get rid of sweet peas.
They're not on the state's list of invasive plants. So
there's a nasty 10 kind of thing.
There's an actual list of plants that are more invasive.
Confused on this one when it says project location, Hayfork Ranger District, South Fork Management Unit. On the next page, it says target area of the car fire footprint, which is far from that ranger district. So that was a question. Just a question. Other than that, it's a great project, I think.
It says what? I couldn't hear that part.
So Bob, Tara didn't hear the question.
I was curious why it says in the beginning that location, Hayfork Ranger District, South Fork Management Unit. And on the next page, it says target areas, and one of the several listed is the car fire footprint, which is certainly not in the Hayfork Ranger District. So just a question.
That's a sound question.
And the map also pretty much shows stuff on South Fork Mountain.
Correct.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I bet you they just got confused in their fires.
Yeah.
Goodness knows we've had enough of them.
Yeah.
I think that I guess I would have some clarification, and this goes back to the NICR question that I think that just the RCD has identified their NICRA, their admin in a different line item, whereas it looks like the Watershed Center is using L partner indirect cost. And so I would just ask for clarification if that is that 17,311, if that's their indirect or not.
Gotcha. Mm-hmm.
Because that puts.
Yeah, any way it can be explained would be helpful.
Yeah.
A good catch, Amelia.
I think that puts them at about, at least rough math, 34%.
So other questions? So a stretch of the arms, is this a 2+ kind of project for people? If you're, I haven't gotten a sense from the group.
Well, the question of where they're doing it is really valid. I think we need to ask them that. Probably it's just an oversight, but.
Yeah, especially looking at the map. But you guys maybe, I don't know if you got maps.
We got maps.
But the map is clearly on South Fork Mountain Road.
So we at least need them to do some correction.
Yeah, they have some corrections, I think, to.
But overall, I mean, I think, you know, one of the biggest problems after fires is that you have all the invasive plants come in. I mean, so I would think this would be a higher priority project in terms of like now, if that's where they're focusing on burnt areas, that's the time to do that.
And it's, I like the fact that it's kind of also a 2-for-1, you know, they get rid of the noxious weeds, but also it helps with keeping the brush down for fires.
Yeah.
So a stretch of hands in a 2+ people.
With corrections.
Corrections, you know, recognizing.
Mm-hmm.
So we only kind of got about half of, how many are 1+? Okay. So we're kind of
1.5+.
A +1.5 here. So this is what we were afraid of. What's that?
So it could easily be a 2 with the questions. It's not a 2 with questions, but it's a 1 with questions.
Yeah.
Multiple questions. It's all about eradicating the noxious weeds.
Okay, so without like a strong consensus for a 2+, I'm going to put 1+. And it'd be weeds. Noxious weed would be the category.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. There's still, just for the people in the room, there's still a lot of snacks over there. If the people are starting to get a little bit hungry, to kind of feel free to get up. And I did bake some cookies too, just because I do for meetings. Next one, our number 7 in the hard copy is Guy Covington Fuels. What number is that on the spreadsheet?
Number 8.
Number 8.
So,
so corrections and comment questions.
well, so, you know, since I live in the general vicinity, kind of, I'll take Randy's. Yeah. So, the community has been agitating for some fuel reduction along Highway 3, and particularly at the intersection of Guy Covington and Highway 3, because that's like a choke point if there was an evacuation. There's a lot of material right at that intersection. So, but the thing is, you know, Caltrans has done some fuel reduction already on parts of this that are shown up on the map as project area. So my question was more, you know, again, here's a nice round number, $75,000. I just had questions about how many acres have already been done. There's a discrepancy between 23 acres on the project proposal versus 15 acres in the narrative. So just questions. I think it's a really worthwhile project, but how many days is it going to take the crew to do this and justify that salary cost, and how many acres are going to be done, and, you know, how many acres are already done that they don't need to do. So
I would also, living in that same neighborhood, I also wanted to mention that they have a big correction they need to make on the first page under project goals and objectives. Yes. The goals and objectives reads to update the Weaverville Community Forest Trails maps, which I'm sure was just a cut and paste error, but what it needs to kind of get fixed. Bob, and then Randy.
I know the area. I understand the need for the project. A question I had is it's atypical in my mind that the downhill side of the road has a wider treatment area than the uphill side of the road. Typically, it's the opposite for efficacy.
It's actually pretty flat right there.
Yeah.
So for people who are trying to follow you on the map, that would be
the west side is typically uphill, but there's not much slope there, according to Carol.
Yeah, no, there's not much slope. And I think part of the other piece of that is there are the neighborhood, the fires that start in the neighborhood that move towards the highway, which there was actually one that they had to put out that the volunteers had to respond to in the last 12 months.
That was structure fire.
It was structure fire, but structure fires become vegetation fires pretty quick.
Yeah, we had a structure fire right at that intersection of Guy Covington and Highway 3 that moved up into the trees that would have precluded evacuation, but we knocked it down. So that was one of the incentives for could we get some fuel reduction so people can actually evacuate?
So if I have the questions that Randy, go ahead.
I kind of agree with Carol. However, was it a year and a half ago? PUD went through there and did a mass amount of right-of-way work on the lower end of a large chunk of that. So I kind of agree where the costs are a little out of line for what really needs to be done. However, having also been a fire chief and dealt with that area, Long Canyon and Upper Covington's is a nightmare. If there's a fire on the highway, those people are in trouble. There has been one in Long Canyon in very recent history. We were very lucky. Any sort of fuel reduction that can slow down or stop a fire coming off the highway along that stretch is a benefit no matter how you want to look at it.
Yeah, Forenza.
In my opinion, this is a good project. You know, I don't know the area, but the bulk of the proposal, it sounds perfectly fine and unexceptionable to me. But maybe this is one that we need to consider as putting it down to a 1-year funding, because they're asking for multiple years. So, you know, ask them if they can do this with 1 year and then come back if they succeed.
Yeah, that was one of my questions also, was it's not that big a project, and it wasn't sure why it was stretched into multiple years. And, you know, Forest Service recognized it as being important enough that they did a fairly quick, very quick turnaround NEPA on that project. So I think there's a sense of urgency to get it done. Tara, you had your hand up.
Just a question for you guys, Pat, having, you know, sitting here in a new role for me. So if we're looking at $75,000 to do 20 acres, is that correct?
Yeah, $5,000 an acre.
Yeah, so that's the way my brain goes from my old job. Is it goes to how much are we paying per acre, and so the things that, if I were sitting in your shoes, the things that make things like that cost more, and Brian could tell you this too, you know, slope, how thick is it, all of those things that how it's like was mentioned, you know, have some of the acres been done before? I think I would, and I hear the group, it's definitely an important piece of ground to treat, both for where it's located in relation to the community. It was certainly important to get the NEPA done, but that's just I just guess it's a process question. Does the group always look at every project as a whole? Do you ever worry about setting not a precedent, but setting like a, you know, $5,000 to the acre to do a fuels mechanical hand treatment? Is that something that you guys think about in the big picture or not? And I'm just asking the question. I don't have an opinion. I think
I always try to look at the cost just, you know, relative to what they want to do. The Watershed Center has a fuel reduction project that's a lot lower cost per acre, but it's mastication. And yeah, we realize it's going to cost a lot more with hand crews. But I think what Randy and I are saying is the identified project area on the west side, about, you know, about half of the distance on the west side has already been done a certain distance by Caltrans. And on the east side, PUD has done underneath the power line for quite a distance. So there are areas that are already treated within that 15 acres. So that's why I asked earlier, how many days estimate do they have for the hand crews that they're really going to need to be out there doing the work? It just helps me figure out better whether that's justified.
So Pat, I'd like to propose a double plus with questions and clarification on that one.
Okay, we got a couple more comments. We'll save our hand raising.
Yeah, I'll go with single plus on that with some more explanation for the goals and objectives of something like this, because like Tara stated, my mind thinks, what is the cost? Yeah. Okay, and with that, there's maintenance with hand treatments. I'm totally for fuel treatments here, but there's enough fiber on the landscape right here to treat all diameters through all age classes and take it to the next step. And I'm not picking on the project. I look at this and I compare this to a Highway 44 project, if any of you are aware of that. I look at the whole Highway 3 corridor and think of that in places that something like that can be implemented. And are we going to put $5,000 an acre to go back and treat it 3 years later for half that cost? Because it has to be maintained. Or do we take it to the next step? And it's not we, it's them, it's the proposal. And I have a heart, I mean, I get what they're trying to say. And yes, I agree with the treatment and something needs to be done. So I think this is one that I would like to see some more explanation and justification of this to front $75,000. Can we get more bang for our buck is basically what I'm saying. Is there something else that we can do there for them to develop some revenue based to pay for the treatment?
Amelia.
I have a quick thing on changing treatment or whatever. It depends on whatever the NEPA says. That's that one. But then I guess my clarification question on this is it states in the front section, 15 acres of forest service, but then, and it states that they're not going to do it on state or other private lands, but those are still continued into the project area. So that needs clarification. And then my second thing is the green section that's in that 23 questionable acres does not look like 15 acres. So where's the other 15 acres? The other part of the 15 acres is my other part of the question.
Well, the green is the Forest Service parcels that are part of Covington Mill.
Right, but is that 15 acres, Carol? I mean, because if you're saying that whole polygon is 23, that looks less than 15 to me, but I would just ask for clarification on that.
So I get the question. Give me your clarification again.
Clarification that the area of treatment is only Forest Service, and clarification that on the exact acreage of the planned treatment.
I think what the difference is that the pink part of the map, there's Forest Service in that pink part.
So
the pink should be private timber.
The purple on the back page is actually state.
Oh yeah, there's another.
So
if it's saying that they're not going to treat state land.
So just lots of questions about where they're going to actually treat and the acreages.
Yep, I got it.
Thank you.
So on the arm stretching, I was hearing 2 pluses, but with clarifications. Is that or 1 plus with clarification? We'll go people who would want to stretch their arm out for 2 plus with clarification. Raise their hands. 1 plus. Okay. So it's a one plus. We've got lots of questions. Okay. The next one on our list is our number 8, which is Hayfork South fuel management zone improvement and maintenance. What number is that?
20 on the spreadsheet.
20, okay. Just save a recurring question for the Watershed Center and the RCD. We don't need to repeat. I will just ask them the question about where is it and how is it they come up with their indirect cost, because all their proposals will have the same question. I would suspect this one, their indirect is in letter L again. So I'll just ask that question for them globally to answer.
And this is kind of like what Brian was bringing up. They're talking about treating 100 acres for $100,000. So, but it's mastication. So they have the luxury of but they have the ability that they can get a lot more acres.
Yeah,
and
I
isn't
think
this an area that was treated once before?
Well, so I had this is kind of Pat thinking about being a RAC member before. The Hayfork South Fuel Management Zone is something that the RAC has funded multiple times, but it's the whole south side of Hayfork. So this could be a new phase. It could be going back in to retreat a phase that was funded 10 years ago, as far as I know, because like Brian said, you're never done. So that would be my question, would be some clarification for them on, is this new ground? Is this repeat ground? That kind of thing.
I just have a nitpicky question under column A. It says contract and administration $2,000, but down here at the total estimate, they got $2,200. I was just wondering where the other 200 came from.
Good catch. Fact. Yeah.
Am I missing something? Are there no maps with this proposal?
Yeah, scroll farther down, Glenn.
There is a map.
There it is. I see them. Yeah.
I did the same thing.
Now, I do have a little, just a couple little comments.
Sure.
This area that they're proposing working in, I mean, that is a very vulnerable area for us over in Hayfork. We often get fires that start hitting that area or almost hit that area very frequently. So if you're treating this, I mean, this is a good use of funds to protect the community.
Yeah, I mean, I think the RAC is support, and it always occurs and shows up in every iteration of the Community Wildfire Protection Plan. It's always been a high priority area. Anybody, any other thoughts, questions? You don't have to overthink them. We got a lot of them to think through. So would the sense of the group be 2 pluses on this one?
1 plus with question.
I was going to see. So people who think it's 2 plus, raise their hand.
Oh, what the heck?
Okay, so 2 plus. With questions. I mean, I've got the questions about, is it new area that they're treating or is it retreatment, and make a correction to the budget. So the next one on my list, I think,
Hayfork
Youth Conservation Crew.
That's number 18.
Oh, sorry. So the last one was fuels.
Last one was fuels. So I will say this is a project that previous RACs funded, I think, multiple times.
But it's kind of to me, it's the same as the Ascend Wilderness. I mean, you're getting guys with some experience, and you're getting them with the, developing a work ethic. And so we need those kind of people coming up the pike.
And I would say it's hard to get funding to do this kind of work.
So I would also,
kids.
I would also tell you that in the Title II, the actual law, there's specific reference to youth conservation crews, funding youth conservation crews as a specific type of project to be funded. Anybody, any other? I guess it's a question. And when Carol mentioned Ascend, it reminded me that this is the one where they talk about partnering with Ascend for the projects, or some of the projects. And my question is that we need to make sure that we're not getting double dipping two proposals funding the same activity, which I don't think is the case, but I think we just need some clarification that and it's on page 3 of 4 where it says list known partnerships.
Mm-hmm.
We just want to make sure that we're not, we aren't paying twice.
And we're funding additional trips.
Yeah, or additional
geographies also, right?
I'm kind of curious about how they're recruiting kids. Where they're getting from? 15 to 18, 40 hours a week. That's a full-time job for a 15-year-old. I mean, are we within labor laws and things like that?
I do actually have a partial answer to that.
Yeah, go ahead, Forenza.
My brothers have worked for this, under this before when they were younger. They're not under this age group anymore, but they did work with it. They were out in the forest cutting down trees with experienced loggers, fallers. It led to them learning how to be certified loggers, fallers themselves in the course of their firefighting duties. So this was great for them. And I don't know exactly how they got my brothers, but I assume that there was an opening and they took it, and it's summer work. So it's full-time work, but it's all summer work.
Yep. And they're recruited in primarily in Hayfork.
Yes.
So at this point, I know they've been looking at getting one for Weaverville as well. But the Youth Conservation Corps have a long history with the Forest Service, and they've just been a great program, especially in some of the smaller communities. It provides, a good paying job, relatively good paying job in a very rural area, and gets them some really good life skills. So this program isn't unique to Hayfork, and has been a really foundational program for the agency, and one we're very proud of, because it helps educate and employ the next generation. So just give you that little bit of background.
Yeah. Amelia.
I have one question. At times it's hard to find leaders to run these programs, and maybe that's somewhere where the Ascend comes in as the subcontractor to run some of these. And so my question is just, how do they plan to overcome that lack of capacity and staff building to run and manage these crews? Because I think it's a great exercise, but we also want to ensure that it will be a successful experience.
Okay, good question.
And just a thought, I mean, it is a multi-year project. It's a lot of money, $134,000. But, if it's something that the RAC's likely to fund every year, you could always say, well, we're just going to fund 1 year this time. Next year, we're going to do another 65, whatever.
But if we needed to break down find a way to work our budget, right?
Yeah.
We still have to somehow, if we end up with too many 2 pluses, we're in a meeting or two, we're going to be confronted with how do we get down to 1.25 million. Yeah. Okay, so I'm getting good vibes on this one. So stretch your hands for those who think this is a 2+. Remember, this is not a vote. You're not gonna, you can have a different opinion in another week. So another watershed center project. The next one up, our number 10 on the hard copies is what?
21.
21. So this is Indian Valley Summer Camp. I guess we call this education or youth kind of project. Again, the RAC has always looked very favorably generally on youth education kind of projects and funded them, maybe not to the extent that they have asked for money all the time. At least this time it's not my dogs. They could be barking, but you can't hear them. So yeah, so this is a multi-year funding, I think, also as
that was my dog, and I'm gonna have to
no, they're not here.
you know, I'm gonna have to bow out of this one, but I worked with these guys on the river with them, and they're just, what I like about this organization is how you're not just working with the kids, the parents are there too, and you're building a family, you know, dynamics and things like that with it. And I think they do that all the way through. It's really a community effort. I'm very impressed with them. So I guess I bow out at this point, right?
but if you were going to raise your hand on this one, it would be 2 pluses.
Yes.
Okay. Any need for questions or clarifications, or is this generally stretch our hands in favor of 2 pluses? Everybody who's interested. Okay. So Lasix Lupin Conservation Cattle Guards. So you're in favor of, you got a question about this one?
I'm absolutely not in favor. If you would like to know why, I will be happy to tell you.
Yes.
Make her talk closer to her mic.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on, let's see. Is this
while
better?
you're talking,
What number is this? I'm sorry.
Number 3
is
number 21 on no,
it's number 3 on the.
Oh, number 3.
3 on the
spreadsheet.
Yeah. So two things. I just think that this is kind of a waste of money because the cattle guards that they're proposing to put in won't, if somebody wants to get the allotment that's on the other side of the cattle guards, this isn't going to help the Lassic lupine at all. Now, currently that allotment is vacant, but it doesn't mean that somebody can't come and get it literally tomorrow. The second thing is that the rancher who has the allotment that the cattle are on, that they are going on to the area where the Lassic lupine is actually responsible for keeping their cattle on their allotment. So anybody that wants to protect that Lassic lupine, they probably need to actually speak to the rancher who has the allotment.
Okay, well, thank you. So other people, yeah, Bob.
Looking at the map of the allotments, it's a little unclear to me, but it seems to me that the Forest Service should not be including in an allotment an area of critically endangered plants, perhaps.
Correct.
Well, I'm wondering if it could be better funded with a fencing exclusion zone that other riparian corridors and wetland meadows and such are being fenced out of cattle areas. Guard.
Yeah, I mean, my question was, you know, cattle don't always stick to the road. So the cattle guards are only going to help them if they're going down the road. If they go through the fence.
It's like a lupin marginal line or something.
I think it said it was followed by a fencing thing, project.
Brian's got his hand up too.
And I agree. with what's being said. Number one, it's open range. Number two, cattle guards aren't going to stop this. I agree with taking the tactic of, okay, well, if we're going to fence this off, then let's look at the population in those areas and fence those areas off. Primarily, number one, and then secondary, look back at the cattle guards to protect those areas. It's South County. It's open range. 2 cattle guards, $30,000 isn't gonna do a cotton picking thing. So, I mean, if we really want to protect it, I think we need to look harder, or they need to look harder in their proposal at protecting those plant areas.
Ross, in the time of these devastating forest fires, I would like to be worried about the smallest of flowers, but I'm not that guy. You know, don't mean much to me. Everybody's rating these things and we're talking them down. And what I'm going to tell you what was important to me, I rated them. I said, if I can live in this county anymore. So forest fires and getting rid of the cutting down the wood, fuel reduction is important to me. Trail building and anything touristy is important to me because that's what we have to sell, let's say. If money means everything, all of us wouldn't be able to live here unless we had some tourists coming in. So trail building is important, and educating the youth is important, and then everything falls into someplace after that. But that's what's important to me, and I like the fact that we have people that are checking all these figures and everything, because I didn't do that, you know, and that's important too. But
Jeff. So I would also know that there are environmental groups on the coast that have proposed alternatives to this in the past, actually caging individual lupin plants, but they've gotten pushback from the Forest Service when they tried to do that, right? So now the Forest Service is proposing cattle guards when they actually had a previous solution in place that got resistance. So I think, you know, there's, I agree with everything that's been said. I think there's better ways to go about this if we want to protect those plants.
Just reminded me of that previous situation where it was proposed to do it a certain way and the Forest Service, for whatever reason, disallowed it. But it says there are literally 130 plants known. It doesn't say how, I can't find how many acres that covers, but it seems like you could certainly fence 130 plants for under $30,000 with a cattle exclusionary fence.
I believe it was 7 acres.
7 acres?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
that reinforces what I said about $130,000 cattle exclusion fence.
So am I accurate to say that if you were to raise your hands now, it'd probably be a minus sign?
Well, I want to ask
yeah.
So having done a lot of hiking in the Twins, I would say that, and comparing them to other places, you know, I'm a little bothered by the cattle in the meadows that are happening. And it sounds to me like what you're saying is that this is it's just not the answer to the problem. But can we go back to this particular organization when they come in and say, have you considered these other solutions to them? I mean, keep the conversation going.
I think, yeah, those are the questions that I've written down. And the organization is the Mad River Ranger District for the Six Rivers National Forest.
Oh, okay. So it's not, all right. Okay.
So we know how to find them.
Yeah. Championed by the North Coast California Native Plant Society, North Coast chapter.
I would also
right there. It almost seemed like this.
Amelia?
That they did not identify any match on this, which we had also identified as something we wanted to prioritize. So I just wanted to
call
that out as well.
So Bob and then Carol.
Isn't that match in column A?
Well, it's federal match. So it's federal match to federal money.
That would be under the RAC, that's allowable as match.
Yeah. It's just, yeah. If you wanted to look at that they're looking for outside sources of funding to actually contribute to this in another way, then they would look for local or state funding. So I get if the California Native Plant Society is championing
At
it
least
so much,
45 minutes away.
do they provide grants?
Provide grants? No, they don't have any money.
Loud enough that everybody can hear.
They don't have much money. They do lots and tons of volunteer labor, but
That's you know, that counts as match too. If they were, but probably putting cattle guards is probably not a volunteer labor effort.
And I would say again, I don't know that match is prioritized. It's just something we consider. So if somebody doesn't have match, but it's a really good project, that's still okay.
Right.
It doesn't. It's just that we consider whether or not there's match.
Bob, then.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I just, it seems like the group in general raises some really important questions about the method that they're choosing to protect the plant, not not necessarily whether the plant's worthy of protection. There seems to be a group that would like to see it protected. But I think that this one has a lot of questions on it, and it would be one that would be hard to rate, given if their only solution is we want you to put in two $60,000 cattle guards, and they can't explain how that would actually protect the plant. That's really the kind of the issue at hand, correct? Not so much, I don't know the history, and it's hard to vote or not vote, but it's hard to weigh it with a history that not everyone knows. So I think, and with plants like timber, they change, they don't stay static. So I think, but they definitely have some questions to answer for the group by the sounds of it. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay, Bob.
I read this, maybe I missed it, but specifically, I would like to know, are they truly proposing 2 cattle guards across the road and no fences on either side of that cattle guard? Is that possible to?
I think I read something about a fencing project to follow.
It's in the very last letter signed by Carol Ralph. Cattle guards will be followed by a fencing project to complete the barrier.
One of the things that these kind of projects bring up to me is maintenance. 10 years from now, you have cattle guards that are filled in because Mother Nature is constantly rearranging things itself. And the cattle guard is not effective anymore. Well, we got the project, the plants are fine for now, but people change, attitudes change and whatnot. There's a whole lot of these kind of projects that we have that I really have a question about down the road maintenance. We're funding an initial thing, kind of like what was brought up about the Covington area, coming back in 5 years and cutting the brush again. There's always an ongoing maintenance issue with a lot of this stuff.
I think other than education projects, you're probably right. Everything has a maintenance, down the road, Forenza.
And the project does say that in their monitoring plan that silt and trap by cattle guards will be removed as part of yearly Forest Service road maintenance activities. But anybody who's been out on the Forest Service roads know that where's the maintenance? It's hardly ever, like there's spots where it's maintained, but it's not out there in the middle of nowhere.
We don't have an engineering department anymore.
Yeah. Okay.
If I can just,
go ahead.
I'm differing for the first time, kind of differing with the group. I don't see it as saving a plant. Now, I haven't been out to the Lassix, but I imagine it's one of those environments that we have in the Trinity Klamath area that is a unique environment. We're not just saving a plant here, we're protecting habitat or the potential to it. But it still comes down to if we don't think what it's going to do is effective for it. I don't know. I also am thinking that keep it around, and this has got, I can't imagine the botany department at Humboldt State University, for example, might not be interested in this in the future as a research area if there's an indigenous plant growing up there. I think it's one of the most important things for us to look to protect because it's unique. When I started looking at Lassix lupin, it's the only place in the world it grows. Am I right?
That's correct.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's an incredibly unique place.
Yeah. So I want to hear more from these guys. I mean,
yeah, we got their questions.
Yeah.
Okay. So our next one is also from.
Did we do a rate on that?
I kind of just assumed it wasn't, everybody was going to, if we put negative.
Minus, yeah.
Minus. That was kind of the sense I got. Anybody not want it to be a minus? Okay, Bob.
I'd be neutral.
I'd rather just put it down as questions.
Yeah,
I think we have a category of just 2 questions.
I can do that.
Answers to questions.
Okay. And just as a final aside, in part responding to Ross and tourism, I'm somebody who travels many, many miles to see a rare plant.
And we've been to the last
tourist attraction.
You spend a lot of money when you're doing this?
I do. I spend as much as I spend, as I would spend if I were bicycling, probably. Gas in my car. I'd have to put gas in my car. So, Anyway, the next one, our number 12, Mad River Fuels, Three Forks Fire Salvage Project, hazardous fuels reduction treatment. What number on the spreadsheet?
4.
4? Okay. Questions, comments on this one?
Tom's got his hands up.
But it might be in here. I've just missed it. But is NEPA already done on this?
I believe it's in
In
the
August,
works, I believe.
Okay, so it would be done at the end of next year or in a year.
I think it was.
Well, maybe it's tied to this. It's a Three Forks, right?
It's Three Forks. I thought it was part of
It is
that.
approved. Yeah.
The C or the EA that they did.
Yes, the EA on the Three Forks.
Okay.
Bob.
So this is an area that the collaborative working group, Arnold, myself, amongst the people who are here, Brian was probably on that trip that we took, Van Horn, drainage, that whole loop around. It's a devastated, it's high severity. There's nothing alive anywhere in it. What we looked at was the immediate hazard fuels, hazard tree reduction that they were doing, but this is that area and it could stand some help. There's existing roads through the whole area.
So is that a 2-star in your mind?
I don't know how to answer that.
Go ahead.
Three hands up, so I don't know who of us did first. So there's a couple reasons I like this. I know that Mad River has done this sort of thing before. They are gung-ho on the fuels reduction out there. They get the work done that they say they're going to do, which is pretty fantastic. This is I believe that this is the only project that we have been given that's actually going to generate income. I believe something like $150,000 of merchantable timber. And of course, anywhere that you've got a bad burn scar out there, the more you can do, the better. That will start restoring the landscape.
This is exactly the kind of project I think we should be about this time of forest fires.
So my only question is, so they're getting 50,000 in CCI money and 50,000 in Joint Chiefs money. So they're asking for another 50,000. So is that really going to expand then what they're able to do? Is that the idea? Is, how much more bang do we get for that buck versus the 100,000 they already have?
So the merchantable component of this project has been implemented.
Meaning, you're saying it has been?
It has been, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
there's no way it hasn't been.
What's that?
It would have to have been, because otherwise you're losing right out of merch pretty quick by now.
Yeah, yeah. And so the majority of it there's places on the map that haven't, but the majority of this has merchantable wise has been implemented.
And so this is all the submerge
logging /
yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
August fire, August complex footprint.
And I don't know if it's a question we should ask or not, but I mean, the August complex and just this, the footprint of this NEPA is huge, is big. Are we going to see a similar proposal each year for more of this, just so we know?
Well, I'm a big fan of this because the merchantability has been pulled off. So that's
Yeah.
step one. Now you have slash and the submerged that needs to be taken care of. So it's the next step of the process. This is what needs to be happening along the landscape, in my opinion.
My question is this $150,000 isn't going to fix all the problems. So are we going to likely see this project title phase 2 and phase 3, just so we can kind of plan?
I don't think so. It does. Sorry to interrupt. It does say in their project goals and objectives that the requested funds as shown in the project cost worksheet are for the hazardous fuels treatments only within the salvage units.
So I know that, but it only, but will it get all the hazard fuels taken care of in the boundaries of this NEPA document, or is there some future phases that we should anticipate? That's all I'm asking.
Pat, I can only speak to the August phase 1 on the Shasta Trinity, and I would say, you know, I didn't, when we planned that, we didn't limit it only to where we thought we would be able to get merchantable wood out. We included areas that we really were critical to treat the fuel. So my answer for the TRMU in my normal ranger hat would be yes. I would expect you to receive more than one proposal. I mean, as we get ground, I wouldn't be surprised if you saw tip FERS proposals still coming in from the fires. And was that 15 or 18? So for your, I can only answer for my unit, and I would say, yeah, I would expect, as we have these large fire footprints, there's no way that we can get enough done in a year anyway.
Okay.
So I would expect it.
Yeah, I'm just going to ask the question.
Yeah.
Amelia?
All right. Putting on my fire safe council hat here, there's going to be so much of the landscape that needs treated. I'm very much in support of this project. I think that Nancy has put herself in a good position to get some of this work done. You know, another $50,000 means more work. And I think that's an amazing thing, especially for the Southern Trinity community that feels a little hurt, that feels a bit abandoned. I think that this is something that could mean something to them. And on top of that, you know, once you get your contractors out there and really working, you know, sometimes the biggest hurdle is getting them there. And once they're going, if you can just keep paying them and keep moving the project along, you're going to get a lot more done than if they're going to have to come back next summer and then restart the process, get reoriented, get everything. Once they're rolling and in their groove and things keep going, you're going to get a lot done. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay. So Randy.
I agree with the project. I just find it rather interesting that the benefit number is almost identical to the total cost number. I don't know whether that's just happenstance, but it's just kind of an interesting
benefit number.
Yeah, the direct economic benefit is virtually the same amount as the total estimated cost. And Carol likes round numbers.
So what's
I don't
sense
like
of the group? 2
stars.
Two pluses. Hands up. No, Bob.
Could I add a question into the mix?
Yeah, Arnold, please do. I'm sorry I missed you.
I can't actually figure out what kind of materials and supplies would be needed for this project for $13,000. You know, I think I envision them piling and burning and pushing stuff with machines, but I don't know what materials you need for that.
Ground stabilization.
Well,
well, that's a fair question. We'll ask them.
Pile covering and drip porch tool.
Cover piles sometimes, that's it.
Yeah, you need some paper, craft paper to cover the piles, but 13,000 bucks. I can't get there.
Yep.
We'll ask them.
Matches.
See if they can get us there.
$5 diesel and gasoline doesn't take much. Coach fuel.
Okay, so Bob, did you have?
I'm just ambivalent. I've been there on the ground. It's just a drop in the bucket compared to the scale of what we're dealing with year after year here. Could it be better spent somewhere else? I don't know. I just have real mixed feelings about it. I see the benefit, but it's just a drop in the bucket, and why there are not 100 other places.
Yeah, you could sort of say the same thing about every project that comes up. We live in the immense forest with a lot to do, but we got to roll up our sleeves and start somewhere
and prioritize.
And I agree with that, but this is a secondary treatment to the primary treatment. And that's why I'm the most supportive of that, is taking that next step.
It would be a good question to ask them. Why do you prioritize this place as opposed to the other? We could ask them that question.
Brian kind of just answered that. There's already been a primary treatment, so this would be follow-up.
I just had a time check, so we've done a third of them.
Yeah, I've been keeping track of that.
So I'd be the 1+ on that.
Plus, everybody else was a 2+. Okay, the next one, Pine Cove Marina, real simple little slender proposal I wrote. What number is it on the?
Number 2.
Number 2. So essentially it is to do a little bit of trail work near the marina. I guess it's kind of noxious weed management in part also. Amelia, then Bob.
Is there existing NEPA covering this work in this area?
I have no idea. It'd be a question to ask them.
Okay.
And they
NEPA for cutting brush.
I actually think this is not Forest Service land.
But it doesn't have to be if it's got a benefit to Forest Service.
No, that's
as far as the NEPA.
Point. The NEPA, that was my point.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah,
but it's federal funding.
So when federal funds are used,
okay.
you gotta do NEPA. Bob, then Ross.
So my question on this one is column B, requested Title II contribution 0. So they're requesting nothing from us?
No, they just did that wrong. If it doesn't match the narrative.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, back on the earlier when they filled in how much was requested, they put in 5,000 under number 22.
Gotcha.
So I mean, this form, if you've never done these forms before, if you're just a regular grant applicant, you're not super experienced like the Forest Service or Resource Conservation District. These are pretty
hard to use.
Hard to use.
Not any harder than Caltrans encroachment permit forms, I'm learning. But anyway.
So I think this is an existing trail that's been overgrown.
Yeah.
And it goes up towards Ackerman Campground. So it's part of the trail around the lake system. So I'm for it.
What a surprise.
I've actually walked part of it with the dogs.
It's the Ross Molyneux Pre-Memorial Trail.
Yeah. It's getting close.
Any other thoughts or questions on it? What's people's inclinations on this one?
It's good for campers and hikers and the people who are staying around there. It's a little piece of trail. It's right in the middle, just off the road. And it's just it's nice for tourists.
Yeah.
So is it on private ground?
No, I'm not sure. I think
in the rec area.
I remember they said public.
I think it's public land.
We got Forest Service mark.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there's very, very little additional information provided. So this has some questions for me, but otherwise I like it.
There's better hand up.
know land ownership would be something we want to clarify.
It says yes there for state and private. So
Says yes on
number 11.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It says both private and federal land.
I guess the funding is all in contract. So do they anticipate contracting this to a local company? Okay.
And lease property.
Or it's a contractor grant cost, so we'll have to find out. I don't know that they can get a grant as a private entity.
It's actually private, it goes down the lake.
So
that's because they screwed it.
Kind of move us along. What's the thoughts here? People kind of like the idea, need a little more information. Are we two pluses and some questions?
Yeah.
Yeah, people are okay with that.
It's a quarter mile.
It's a quarter mile. That is $20,000 a mile.
But if you're paying for somebody,
But it's a contractor.
Yeah, a removal.
Yeah.
pulling some noxious weeds.
Scotch broom.
Okay, number 14 on our list is another road project.
That's number 25.
So I know earlier on, somebody, when we were talking about the county road project, characterized this as on a county road, but it's actually after the county road ends and is on Forest Service Road.
Yeah, so I tossed this one into the hat just because the fire department gets a lot of complaints about both the traffic hazards and the fuel hazards along this. It's like 1.2 miles to the Alpine View campground and the Bowerman boat ramp. And Forest Service is not obligated to control the plants that are growing onto the road, even though they've reduced it from 2 lanes to 1 lane. And it crosses SPI property, and SPI is just not thrilled about maintaining a road that they don't use that goes to just primarily Forest Service facilities. So it was just like trying to figure out how to resolve a problem issue.
Is this the road after the barn?
It's after the end of the county maintenance. Yeah.
Amelia.
Is the NEPA completed on this?
Tara can tell. I talked to Tara about it, and it qualifies for some sort of road maintenance.
Yeah, it's normal road maintenance. It would be vegetate T807 is our T-spec associated with road maintenance. We don't need to do NEPA to do normal road maintenance.
Okay.
T807 is a T-spec for vegetation removal that's growing into the road. Yes, sir.
Again, part of the trail around the lake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's a part that you could use by tourists, and people can bike ride and stuff up to the Alpine campground and use that campground. Hikers can hike alongside that road. It would be nice if it was cleaned up.
You might see some nice plants along the way too, Rob.
I know there's a lot of that.
I have to say that one of the downsides of the proposed project is that, I mean, it has incredible blooms of ceanothus and dogwood in the spring, which will get readjusted.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
Right.
So one thing that I'm hung up on with this one is handing money out and setting a precedence for the lack of maintenance, so to speak. A very high use place, very high use campground that money is being taken in to stay at a campground through concessions. And those folks, whether it's their responsibility or not, or whose responsibility is it to maintain the vegetation along that road, hasn't been done. This is just one road. You can lay every road, Forest Service access road, whether it's, you know, Hayward Flat or, you know, this is Alpine View or the one at bottom of the hill. All Tannery. Tannery's another bad one. I'm not a fan of funding something that's just for the sake, that's been neglected. I think that the concessions and the folks that we're collecting money at these campgrounds, and we're not putting any of it back into it. It needs to be done. I get it. I'm all about treating the fuels and doing the maintenance, but this one I just can't jump the hurdle and say, well, I want to give $5,000 out to go do their job for them or to fund them doing their job.
So it's reinforcing them to not do anything, knowing that someone else, we may come in afterwards and take care of it.
Yeah, let's just give them the way out. So, oh, well, RAC will just fund the rest of them. You know, that's where I'm on.
I totally agree. I mean, I felt silly turning this in, but you know, I'm worried that somebody's gonna kill themselves because people drive really fast because it's paved. They can't see each other coming because of all the vegetation. And so while I'm waiting for the Forest Service and the private landowner to, you know, figure out, okay, who's responsible, you know, I'm just worried there's a fire or an accident. So yeah, I totally agree. It's like, how do you fix it?
They could run over an old man on a bicycle.
Yeah.
Oh, looking for pretty plant flowers.
Just out of curiosity, shouldn't the Forest Service be enforcing the contracts with the management people to deal with this sort of stuff? Isn't it part of their job to oversee the campground managers? This is health and safety issue as well as
well, I don't
management to begin with.
I'm guessing there it's off-site. It's not.
It's, you know, it goes to the boat ramp, which is Forest Service, and then the campground, which is a concessionaire, but the concessionaire is not responsible for maintaining the road. It's either the Forest Service who does the actual paved roadbed or the private landowner who's doing the vegetation. And
so Carol, if just playing this out a little bit, if this was funded through the RAC, would the Forest Service be the ones implementing the project?
No, the fire department is the one that's volunteering to have a contractor come and mow it, and then we'll provide the water supply and do all that. It's just, again, it's just trying to problem solve.
Yep.
So if we do fund this and it moves forward, what is the anticipated maintenance? So we do it once, you know, it's going to get more light, it's going to grow back. Who's going to retreat it? What is the long-term plan?
Well, I would ask the Forest Service and the private landowner because it's really their issue and they're just, neither of them are dealing with it. Okay. Anyway.
Glenn.
Yeah, great conversation, very interesting points, but we're talking for $5,000 here and we do have some more to look at. So man, we're thinking about time. These are questions we can ask at the next session too. You know, they're good questions. So,
okay. So just one with lots of questions.
Lots of questions.
Lots of questions.
Just one more comment there, Carol. Sure. That is a cost share co-op road segment. So that no matter what the cost there is 50-50 for SPI and the Forest Service. And that's another reason I'm
She's had conversations.
But I'll just leave it. I'll just leave it.
Yeah, I know that.
Okay.
That road's in the NRA, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. I was squirming in my seat here.
And,
good.
And Sarah's aware.
You write a letter of support, Tara.
So, we're gonna get you, Tara.
I know. I'm waiting for my turn.
It's not you. It's not you. No.
Shasta Trinity Trails Project, Alan Hill. This is the backcountry horseman. And Alan takes a different approach to dealing with these difficult to deal with forms, and he just filled it out by hand.
Yeah.
He's number one on the Excel, right?
Number one. Okay.
What was his name? It didn't have.
Alan Hill.
Alan. Thank you.
Backcountry horseman. The RAC has supported them every time they've applied, and essentially the project is that we provide them fuel money to get their horses in trailers to trailheads to then serve backcountry needs.
primarily they restock CCC and backcountry trail crews, that sort of thing. And that's what they're.
I mean, they've done amazing work with very little kind of financial support. And even when we don't support them financially, they're out there doing it anyway.
Yeah, and the areas they're targeting here had some pretty significant damage from fires this year too.
And they work really closely with Mike McFadden, you know, on the where obviously the where it is they're going to be going and who they're going to be serving.
And I didn't find the cost down. How much they asking for?
41,500. I have a question on that. I mean, it's just a math question, but 36,000 and 3,000 doesn't seem to come up to 41,500. I'm just kind of wondering where the
there's 2,500 up at the top.
Oh, okay.
This is also a multi-year one, so we could ask them what their annual option was if we wanted to do that.
Yeah, because we didn't know that there was going to be more money coming down.
Right.
Right.
So without a lot of questions, that sort of thing, is this a 2+ kind of on everybody's part?
I think so.
Really? Bob? No.
What's the math here? 150 miles, 41.5. It's $277 a mile. Is that right? Hopefully I'm wrong.
Truck and trailer.
I know it's expensive to truck stuff.
They actually, that's probably not the sum total of what they're offering. They do their own trail work. They also support a bunch of other projects that go on up there. So I don't know if you can take the total and divide it by the number of miles that they're dealing with.
Good point.
Yeah.
But they should list everything they're doing that they're going to spend the money on.
Well, it says trail crew.
I think they
function and maintenance.
They do a certain amount of trail work, but then a lot of the rest of what they're doing is just hauling, you know, stuff from point A to point B, the CCC stuff, the fire stuff, the fish.
They also haul a lot of garbage out of the high country.
And there'll probably be a lot to haul out this coming season.
Oh yeah. Food for the CCC crews. They do a lot.
Yeah.
Just for people's info, I should say, it seems like they've applied every year. They've been funded every year in the history of the RAC. Usually not for what they asked for. So, you know, it's sort of open-ended. And actually they'll probably do all the work no matter, you know, if it's more funding or less funding. It just, I think it's nice to offset their very substantial volunteer contribution, but
horses aren't cheap.
And I will do a little homework and kind of give you guys what they asked for the last couple of times and what we ultimately approved. But yeah, Arnold is right. I mean, and that goes with actually a lot of the youth projects that we've talked about. You know, they
actually last time they asked for 39,500 and we gave them 40,000.
Good to know.
Okay.
Must have had a little extra.
We must have.
Kara's got her hand raised.
Kara. I was just going to say, one thing to consider is that the fire that the Trinity Alps and the Yola Bola Wilderness have seen in the last couple of years, you know, that's something that's at least a little bit different in 20 and 21. Not much on the west side, but a little bit different.
Yeah. Okay. So the next one is South Fork Basin Stewardship Community Project, mine number 16. And go ahead, Bob.
So for a time check, we're halfway through and it's 6:30. Are we going to be here until Friday, or are we going to do the other half next Monday, or what's?
We just need to be more efficient.
What's that?
We need to be more.
We need to be more efficient. Yeah. I was thinking of going at least till 7.
we get time and a half after 6:30.
Yeah, you can have that. Amelia brought snacks for a reason.
Mm-hmm. Ready.
And that's 19 on the.
Yeah.
So questions, Amelia.
I have a question about the fisheries monitoring. I was under the impression that the RAC did not fund monitoring.
I don't know that we have funded monitoring, but I don't know that we can't fund monitoring. I think that we had a discussion at our first meeting about monitoring, but the question there was about was related to what we were going to request the Forest Service have in their agreement with the RCD to administer the project. And it had a topic, a line item that was monitoring, but that was monitoring the projects, not monitoring of something specifically as a project.
Yes.
So, and in the past, the RAC actually had its own monitoring committee that went out and looked at projects in progress and that have been completed.
What was that other number again? Can't find it.
19.
19?
I got it.
Has a kids component to it.
Noxious weeds, education.
As I remember, could I ask, as I remember, it wasn't, it was aimed more at adults. I mean, it did something with kids. I don't have it printed out and I don't have it open in front of me, but I felt a little bad that, you know, is sort of a generalized education that wasn't aimed at the kids, which I like usually, and it wasn't getting very much stuff done on the ground compared to most things. It was, I have the same problem with a future one about the fire safe outreach. You know, it's nice to talk to the people, but I kind of feel we'd be more effective with our money getting it closer to the ground or getting it on the ground more often.
It mentions 15 miles of stream improved or restored, 16 miles of fish habitat, 3 acres of native species, 5 acres of noxious weeds. So there's some on the ground impact, quite a bit actually.
I might have got it mixed up with another one then, but I felt it was quite a bit of educational opportunities for people, but
well, they're doing community trash cleanup, stream rivers, and you know, so they're doing community events. It does do work.
I guess.
If you look at number 14 and under project will accomplish, it lists it all.
Yeah, it's the difference between the narrative is pretty general versus the specific numbers and what the project will accomplish.
Yeah.
And they're talking about 85 people.
Yeah. One of the questions that I have is that it seems like it taking advantage of other things that we have or might fund. So it, you know, it talks about the South Fork, you know, project also supports the environmental education camp for Hayfork, which is the Indian Valley camp, which we probably are. So again, I worry about, does this double dip on deliverables?
Yeah, they're talking about the Trek for Trash, which other people organize, and the Splash for Trash, which is the Rotary Club, and
right.
So
I just.
A good question.
And the weed pulling, is it the same one as the earlier fire, you know, forest
resiliency project, are they pulling the same, is it the same weeds? I just want some clarification on that overlap or interaction.
So lots of questions on this one?
Yeah.
Yeah. It seems like a in a weird, I don't may not be accurate, but almost like it's an administrative, a project that is an administrative project helping to oversee those other things.
The coordination of all that.
Some of which we might be funding also. Okay. So it's just like the questions probably on this one. South Fork Ridge Vista Point Interpretation Kiosk.
That's number 5 on the electronic.
Number 5, yeah.
I like the project, but expensive.
Yeah, they need to get Carroll Falls Bowerman sign maker.
Yeah. I got the cost from the RCD. The RCD has a lot of practice getting, nice signs. So the sign at Bowerman that's outside, that's the porcelain enamel with the metal frame, that was $5,500.
And what was its dimension, roughly?
It was, it's 2.5 by 4 feet, something like that.
Yeah, I would say outside signs are a lot more expensive than inside signs.
Yeah.
And they just degrade so quickly.
So the $12,000 is actually pretty accurate, I think, for the sign costs.
I like the project.
Those are really bad, ugly signs that they got up there.
So this is a place I always stop when I go by. I really like it. I enjoy the signs. They're definitely degraded. If you look at the last photograph in this packet, they're proposing quite a bit more than just signs. It's this concrete wall, and there's the spotting scopes are all mentioned in what they're going to do. So
that's a lot more. That's proposal number 3. I don't know, is that the one they're actually proposing to implement? Because they have 3 versions.
They just said that's an alternative.
Yeah.
If that's an alternative, that seems like a heck of a lot of work for $12,000 to me.
No, it's an alternative approach that would have a different price tag.
Yeah, they're not proposing to actually do 3.
Okay.
They're proposing 1.
Essentially. It might be 2. 2 is just, a better quality map.
So maybe that's a question for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And in addition to just the mountain range location and the other things for folks that are familiar with that site, there's some Native American history that's on those too, the Wasik tribe. And
so is this, would this be Randy?
The only question I have, and I'm going to assume that it's been solved since how they have them there, is that there's nothing mentioned about Caltrans, and they are within the Caltrans road area.
That's a great question. But have they approached Caltrans about it?
Yeah.
Funding potentially?
You got parking issue, crossing the highway,
at least coordination.
Being that it's already a plaque, it's probably already had an
encroachment on it. I would assume that, but that's things change.
If there are Caltrans coordination issues. What's the thought group? Couple of pluses, 2 pluses.
Yeah.
With answering questions. Okay, so the next one, my number 18.
Sheet 27.
This is from the Resource Conservation and Development Council.
Not to be confused.
Not to be confused with the Resource Conservation District. Questions, comments? The only proposal I think they submitted.
So my question was, is this a proposal that the county supports? I mean, they're talking about doing all this work for the county and coordinating with the county and all that, but I don't really know what the county thinks of it.
Good question.
I know what I think of it. It's a county road maintenance proposal, and I'm opposed to it.
My concern with the organization as a whole is that a lot of good money goes into it, and I don't see a lot completed with the NEPA and the CEQA. So my question, with its current staffing levels, what actually is the viability of these coming to completion and having signed NEPA and signed CEQA documents, or seeing to the next step to do implementation is a concern for me.
I have a question as to exactly what do they do, because I watched our slightly undernourished road department with a backhoe, 2 loaders, 2 10-wheel drive dump trucks up there working for almost a week, getting Coffee Creek Road back together so that somebody could cross it. 1 to 3 people. I mean, I just, and what do these 1 to 3 people do when there isn't a need? I mean, they aren't going to be sitting around with your equipment waiting for something to happen. It just seems that they're trying to create something to use money for.
Yeah, and their direct economic activity benefit is that, you know, road closures will significantly delay economic activities. It is estimated the closure of Coffee Creek Road for 1 year would prevent at least 2 million board feet of roadside timber salvage operations on private lands. I don't think Coffee Creek's going to be closed for 1 year. I don't think, if it is, there's 3 people aren't going to be able to do anything about it if it's that bad.
It was closed for 36 hours.
Yeah. So is that a minus?
What's the thoughts of people?
1 star? I don't know.
And is it just Coffee Creek Road that they're targeting?
No. But that was their example.
Yeah, Creek Road, Deadwood Road, Lewiston Turnpike Road, Canyon Creek, Aldor Roads, Dutch Creek, North Fork.
I know that the road department is already setting up the billing for FEMA for the work that they did on Coffee Creek Road. So I'm just, I don't see where this is accomplishing anything.
And
I think it's a grab.
Yeah, and you know, just kind of riffing off of that, since I've had a cookie or two, that I think the county is going to be receiving money from not only from FEMA, but from Secure Rural Schools too, right? I mean, there's going to be an allocation there for road maintenance specifically.
So maybe we should apply to the road department for some of those.
You've had 3 cookies. Yeah.
Well, I will communicate with them that we have lots of questions and concerns.
And I think, again, good, have some conversation. And if we can, not to be, I'm not trying to be negative here either. I like Arnold, but I'm not related to him. I got a chuckle. Is thinking how we can collaborate on these projects with those other interested agencies, right? How are we looking at these funds as part of the whole funding that's coming into the county, and how can we work together to accomplish things, right? So I'm going to.
Okay. So I just put that as lots of questions. The next one, my number 19 is Susie Q invasive removal project.
So I just noticed
on the spreadsheet
a numbering discrepancy. I've got 18 as the last one we talked about, and it shows 18 as the Susie Q invasive.
So I noticed that whoever numbered the packets must have been getting really tired, because sometimes Was off.
18 is the last one we talked about.
Yeah, right. But here's the 18 is the Suzy Q and
Yeah, it should be 19.
It should be 19.
18 was yeah, they forgot 18 on the list. Sorry.
How they thought about it.
Yeah, that's what they thought.
I'll give you a nickel's worth on this one, which is that landowners down in the Suzy Q community downriver contacted me. They'd seen the ad in the paper, you know, for funding, and they're really jazzed about trying to deal with their noxious weed issues, which is everything from Scotch broom to star thistle, I think. And they kind of put together a proposal to see if they can get a little bit of help.
So I know the area. I'd like to say I like the tenor of the request. I like it when it's grassroots and people are going to do the work themselves. And seems like a good project to me, and it all abuts federal lands.
Amelia and then Ross.
Do we know if the Forest Service has agreed to do the NEPA for this?
No, and I asked, I think I sent an email to LaJohn and Tara asking what kind of NEPA needs to be done, or was there some programmatic NEPA for already exist? And I think it's in probably Six Rivers National Forest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I warned them that the group that could be the stumbling block.
Thank you.
I've done bids down there on Suzy Q Road. I wouldn't believe a thing those people said down there. They were culprits, every one of them.
My only question about it is they make the community neighborhood group there sound like they're all living together, and
In your hair.
Yep.
I really have a question about access to private property that they're going to request, whether they actually get along that well. And they start talking about cutting down other people's growing stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does mention in here that there are property owners who are uninclined to do anything about their weeds.
Yeah.
So you're going to be doing some people, but you're still going to have a noxious weed problem. However, I like the sound of the project. Generally, it's great. Just can they work with their neighbors?
Yeah, it'd be nice to know of all the different parcels, how many will actually be committed to participate.
Good way to put it.
So I think the only public lands is the little strip along the river there.
Mm-hmm.
Little high water mark on the river, and not all the property owners are adjacent to it.
Right. Okay. So thoughts on the symbol next to this one?
Questions?
Just questions?
Yep.
Okay.
I'd like to ask them if they seem real gung-ho. I'd like to just make sure they somehow touch base with maybe the Forest Service botanist or someone like that, because people can be gung-ho but not do exactly the right treatment. You know, maybe you got to pull up this weed, maybe you got to cut it later or earlier. It seems like gung-ho isn't as good if it's not educated, and it would be fairly simple, you know, a matter of a phone call or hour-long conversation with a botanist. But I'd feel better if I knew they had done that.
I would also say that there's existing community groups that are doing private land works like this as volunteer efforts and not requiring funding.
Yeah, I'm sure there are. Okay, so lots of question marks. Next one, number 20, PCRCD Native Plant Nursery.
Got a number?
Number 7 on the spreadsheet.
7.
I'm in favor.
Okay, thank you, Arnold.
Don't look at me. I don't have answers.
Do you have it? I was looking at you to see if you had any questions.
I don't have questions.
I do.
Okay, Bob.
I'm curious why this is the only RCD project that doesn't show that grant administration amount.
Because they have it under the L. They have it under the indirect cost.
Tricky.
They knew you'd like this one, so they feel they had to hide anything.
And they also, under the monitoring plan, they're talking about this Bluebird wildlife enhancement. So if we don't fund the Bluebird, mine project, do they need as much money for the nursery?
I was curious about that also.
I think I would question if that's a mistake. I don't know if that necessarily.
Yeah, so I don't.
It almost looks like it doesn't belong there.
Yeah. We'll question that.
Yeah.
Usually there's a chronic shortage of native plant materials for all the people that want to use native plant materials. When you get the Caltrans, all the Forest Service units, the river restoration people can never get enough stuff. So,
but then don't they have to pay for it? I mean, why would you subsidize the nursery if they can sell the plants?
You got to ask them that, not me.
Good question.
But there is a need. The
right.
need is unquestionable.
I do know when they have plants that are too mature for their pots, right? Those get given out for free to members of the public. We did provide trees that we have in excess to members of the public post August complex and post river complex. We're getting that squared away. That's all I know that I can speak to. The rest of the nursery is a void to my
Those
brain.
are good questions to ask.
I'm all for this in theory. You can let everybody else grind out the numbers, but
okay.
In theory,
So number 21, Fire Safe Council outreach. What number is that?
So do you want me to answer questions or do you want me to wait and answer questions next week? I will take them if you want to spend time there. It's up to you.
14.
I am happy to accept criticism.
I think the fairest thing is for us to develop the questions and have them answered next week when everybody else is answering questions.
Well, my question is going to be the same one I had before, in terms of more detail on the budget. So $20,000 materials, supplies, $50,000 indirect costs. Just what does it, how did you come up with those numbers?
So for column B and column C, sort of more detail on what is materials and supplies, indirect costs. And this one actually shows that contract grant administration cost G, and it also has partner indirect costs.
Right.
I can explain that one really quick, but I'll be quiet.
Well, I think we're running out of time.
It's so hard.
29.
Well, Carol got to answer her questions.
Sorry.
That's why we're out of time.
This has been been funded before.
So actually, probably the very first RAC project approved or recommended by the RAC in 2002 or 2001 was called the Big Red Truck Project. And that's, I think, evolved into what this looks like today.
So my take on it is it's all good stuff, but I have the same standard question with every RCD proposal, 20% admin costs.
Right, so I'm gonna ask that question globally for them to answer all those instead of in each individual one. So what is this at this point? Just mostly question marks?
Well, I do think funding the Fire Safe Council is gonna, it gets at what Ross is trying to do, which is trying to get everybody to do whatever we can do to keep the county safer.
Okay, so high priority noxious weeds.
Number 6.
If I'm not mistaken, until the last project, the rest of these are RCD.
Yep.
Well, quit asking my question.
Thanks.
I'll speed it up.
I do like how the RCD has the noxious weed proposal and the native plant nursery proposal also, right?
Yeah. You get rid of the noxious weeds and you plant the native plants.
Driving the market, isn't it?
Right. Yeah. Plant the trees, then you cut the trees down because they're fire risk. No.
Well, and to me, it's analogous. We already said we kind of like the Hay Fork one, you know, and then this is the RCD one. So they're both about the same thing, about, you know, 50, 60,000 bucks for noxious weed control.
Yeah.
My issue with this is my wife doesn't like that little yellow flower. She pulls them out wherever she can. And she has a really big problem with all that Highway 3 at Carville.
Dyer's Wood.
Yes, and she's watched the process at least 3 times, pull it up, put it in bags, haul it off, and it comes back because it's not being monitored.
Because the source is still there. The hay trucks are still coming over.
Well, but it's just.
It's Caltrans too.
It's again, part of the issue is that it needs to be on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, I have to say, so one of the sad things is that, I mean, the RAC was funding what your wife was seeing happening, and it was funding it every year, and the population was not growing, at least. And then Congress didn't reauthorize the RAC in 2016, and here we are in 2021. And it's a good example of nobody picks up the pieces when, you know, when the funding goes away. So it's gotten a lot worse, you know.
Going up Coffee Creek Road now.
And it makes it up, you know, up into the, you know, up into the Alps. I guess this is a question we could probably ask again, a lot of the other projects, but they have 2 distinct noxious weeds in 2 distinct geographic areas that they want to treat. It would be the scalability. If there was not enough money for both, which one would they prefer to spend their money on, to spend their energy on? You know, maybe we end up with saying yes to both, but if we didn't, what would be the preference?
And have them make that call. Pat, is that the idea?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Based on what, yeah, something other than us just randomly saying we like Dyer's Wood more than we don't like Scotch Broom. So is there a pluses? I mean, what's our inkling on this one?
Well, we gave 1 star to the noxious weeds for the watershed center.
I think we give one plus.
1 plus.
Okay.
I think you're losing the room. People are getting sleepy. They're slowing down their enthusiasm.
Not 7 o'clock yet.
Get that last 5 minutes out of them.
Ask those RCD employees from when I was there. You worked until it got done.
I wasn't there. Probably we're all staying until late. Let's go.
So Trinity River cleanup.
Great one. Do it. Been involved in it several times. Brings community together. It's needed.
What questions would we have for the RCD to answer?
Again, more detailed budget. You know, how do they come up with $10,000 for salaries? $4,000 for materials and supplies. How many hours do they spend on organizing the cleanup, and what's that salary?
Too many. Stay over here. Okay,
it's like when I had to figure out how much I was making coaching basketball for the high school. By the time I was done calculating all my hours, it added up to $2.13 an hour. I think that's kind of for the at least for this project, how much time these folks put into this project.
Well, then they should show that, you know, that they budgeted for, 100 hours and they spent 300, it's just these round numbers that I'm like, where did that come from?
Copy.
So quick questions that I had was, I was just curious why there's no contribution from the federal agency side, from the Forest Service side of things for something that's
For the Trinity River Restoration Program.
or the Trinity River Restoration Program.
Or BLM.
Or BLM.
So is this a 1+ a question?
Yeah.
Sure. One or two. It's a great project.
Yeah.
But Glenn, you're leaning towards a 2?
I'm leaning towards a 2, but those are, I was actually really surprised to see the bottom line just now. The cost wise, it seemed high, but
yeah.
It is for 2 years.
It is a 2-year
oh,
project.
right. Okay. Yeah.
Well, that helps. That brings it to a 2 to me.
So then it brings it to a 2 for people.
Plus,
yeah, 12 grand is not that much.
Okay.
Can you state the project number again, please?
15.
Unless you're on the computer, it's 15.
Yeah, it's 23 for the people with the handhelds. Okay, number 24 on the hard copies. Weaver Basin Trail System Improvements, Maintenance and Mapping. So I'm assuming there might be a similar question about more detail in the budget.
Yeah.
Yeah. On the mapping side, I mean, it's huge.
The mapping.
Oh yeah. Yeah, Ross is getting lost all the time out there.
I was surprised he was here.
I know.
We had a search and rescue exercise out there in the NARC.
That wasn't me.
I couldn't find out where we were supposed to be on the maps on the internet.
The use of it is huge.
Okay. So general thoughts on this one? Boss?
Oh, this is a great project, and it's just becoming more popular all the time. We're getting more trail users. The race is getting more popular, and people are out there using it. And some people get lost, and we're trying to get better signage and whatnot. I don't know what all this asks for.
I guess, yeah, it's a little more detail on what the tasks are, what the budgets are for those things, what's mapping versus trail maintenance.
And again, I mean, it's another multi-year project, so.
So the Forest Service has adopted a bunch of trails that were user built. And then, so they've added them into the Forest Service's trail system. And so the NEPA is all done on that and everything. And I think they want to map that part.
And this is the one that actually had the entire NEPA decision memo in the back of it.
Yeah.
Okay, so are we thinking a plus or a 2+?
Well, I think this is a 2+ for me.
There's some questions being answered and maybe scalability of the dollar amount. Number 25. I know we're at 701, but we can do it, folks. Okay, Weaverville Community Forest and North Lake Beaver Dam analog NEPA.
That's number 13 on the electronic program.
Hit me.
What we need is less beavers. People building beaver dams.
What does analog even mean in this?
I think that, go ahead.
So they are human-built beaver dams that are maintained to store water, improve the riparian corridor.
They're built to attract.
No,
Not attract.
mimic.
Mimic.
So they're beaver-free beaver dams.
Yes, state of California, you can't move beaver.
That's bizarre.
You can shoot them.
You can kill them, but you can't move them. Yep.
There's another.
Tell me what the number is that this one is.
13. 13. Do you want to plug in? I have another computer that might
Be done.
No, I thought this would hold on.
So we'll keep going so we don't.
So my question on this one was, whether or not it could be like, could we try the community forest first and not do the North Lake? Just because I know in the North Lake where there are beavers, and so.
Oh, yeah, go on.
Yeah, so I'm just curious, maybe scalable. Yeah.
Right.
One half. So.
Great idea.
I love beavers. I love going down and checking out the beaver dam that we have near us and all that kind of thing. But with the many years with the dealing with the restoration program, there's always the spiffy new design of the year, that they all get attracted to over time. I mean, Arnold and I were doing the TAMWAG thing when it was essentially log jam analogs, so manufactured, constructed, engineered log jams versus natural log jams. And then it was rooted, or anchored
Large woody debris.
Anchored root wads, as the analog for nature doing the same thing. And now it's beavers. But everything I read is that the work that they do when they construct something that looks like a beaver dam without a beaver, or in the little null marks, they don't have to do null marks to be on the analogs. But that they work, and they really do a lot. What they do is they back up water. They meter out water, going downstream later in the spring, that sort of thing. So
where in the North Lake area do we have that beavers populate for very long?
They move around.
I mean, for the last 10 years, I've been fighting a beaver family that keeps growing up Treasure Creek. And by building a dam in it, they divert the creek completely and actually destroy more habitat than they're creating. They can't build out in the streams themselves because most of our streams move too much material and whatnot. And I know of at least 6 places that beavers have built dams. They eat up the food supply in about 3 years and move on. Building more permanent dam structures creates debris problems. I mean, I don't have any problem with beavers. Also, coons and beavers don't get along. Coons kill our beavers. And there's a whole lot of problems with trying to develop a beaver population. And I just...
So there, at least this proposal is not proposing to bring more beavers.
No, but they're proposing to try and do the same thing beavers do, which is in our areas, is not necessarily advantageous to anything. Now you go over into the Susanville area, beavers are awesome over there and they do exactly what they're proposing. And their dams do, but not in our area.
Yeah. And so I think what this is proposing is to look into that.
Mhm.
You know, kind of analyze, does it make sense in our, with our geography?
So if it were scaled in half in the community forest as a trial
test project. Yeah.
The beavers moved back into Rush Creek, and you can look down there. It's just where Highway 3 passes, and then Rush Creek is north of Highway 3. Beavers have been in there for 10, 15 years, I think, and they do their job. They, you know, they spread out. They create meadows. Is what they do. They spread out
There's
the
one right
river.
below Bowerman Barn in the meadow there. There's one up on East Fork of Trinity River. I mean, family. Yeah.
The ones by the Douglas City rest stop in Weaver Creek, Caltrans killed them.
Right. So what's the star number?
1 star?
One star with modification.
Yeah, scalability. Yeah. Community forest stewardship. My number 26.
Number 11 on the spreadsheet.
Again. No, it's really hard to not talk. Bob knows this about me.
I do. You've got something to say. I always listen.
Or you guys know the community forest better. What do you think?
My one comment was I was disappointed that column A in the budget with appropriated dollars shows 0. I don't know what that's saying, whether there just wasn't opportunity to connect with the Forest Service on that, but hopefully that could be amended and there's actually some contributions there.
And isn't there a fund based on retained receipts?
Yeah.
So wouldn't that be an appropriate source for column A if that's not reflected in column C?
And so, you know, but the other one's L partnered indirect costs seems like it's been the overhead, but this one, it's got to be including a bunch of other stuff. And there isn't the NCRA anywhere else. So what is $47,000 of partner indirect costs?
Yeah.
And the idea is right, you know, and having this umbrella organization happening for sure. I mean, it's, you know.
A couple of specifics on the second page. They talk about addressing legacy issues of motorized users within the spaghetti bowl. I've been here a long time. I've never heard that term. What is that referring to?
The spaghetti bowl. Does anybody know? Yeah, it's that mine tailing red dirt area just up Weaver beyond the high school. Yeah.
No.
The start to the Mackenzie Gulch Loop.
And then the second comment I'd make under number 17, list known partnerships and collaborative opportunities. I was surprised the Weaverville Community Forest Steering Committee was not on the list. Maybe there's a reason for that.
And again, this is a multi-year proposal.
Yeah, you whisper.
I wrote this at 2 a.m.
Okay.
I think it's always good to get people out. You know, people don't come out and they don't walk the trails. And I was a scoutmaster here for 20 years. These kids' parents never took them camping. You know, they wouldn't have gone camping. So if you don't have things like this, nature walks and whatnot, people just don't get out into the woods and they don't appreciate it. And I see that Trinity Trail Alliance would be a partner in this too. And I'd like to see it happen. I'd like to see more people using the Trinity Basin trails. It's a valuable thing that we have here, and it's underused.
Yeah. I think anything that can be done there's a good thing.
Amelia.
Can I make one blanket statement?
Yeah.
I didn't know I was allowed to fill out column A, and that's why there's nothing in there.
Oh,
But
okay.
I can fix that.
Yeah,
So
those
sorry.
Column A's, yeah,
I was told that it needed to happen on the Fed side, so I
Yeah.
didn't touch
Right.
that.
it
So
needs to
sorry.
happen on, but yeah.
But same thing, yeah. You weren't supposed to fill out column A unless you had the district ranger telling you it was okay.
Okay.
Slacker.
So I'm disappointed that
We're glad you're feeling better.
in the list of known partners, that I wasn't specifically listed because I'm the one that does the nature hikes.
They'll contact you.
It's not worth anything.
I will
Is this
answer.
multi-year?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'd say two big thumbs up on this thing, but yeah,
Right.
if we
With
can,
questions.
yeah, a few questions, and then ask if we can do some, maybe split some money between years or something.
Yeah. Feasibility kind of thing.
Okay.
Okay, 27, we're almost there.
Summer day camp.
Great program.
Yeah, my only question there was, I think you need to put some money in materials and supplies, right, to pay for stuff. Oh,
Summer day camp is 10 on the spreadsheet.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Anybody, anything else? And Amelia, I would say you ought to consider looking at column C, that the Young Family Ranch itself and the space that gets used has a value as a contribution that you didn't take credit for.
Yeah, and BOR also contributes.
Yeah.
So
And I think you've gotten funding from Trinity River Partners in the past and things like that.
yes.
trust.
Trinity Trust.
Mhm. And yeah, same thing. If CalFresh Nutrition Program is going to participate, there's a value to their staff participation. But again, the budget numbers that are always so round, I'm sorry, that just bugs me.
Really?
No.
Hadn't noticed.
You guys at least get to go home in different cars.
I'm not gonna touch that one.
Yeah, that's okay. But it was in it anyway.
I'm going your way if you want another one.
Let me stand alongside.
And hopefully there's no snow too.
Yeah.
Okay, so is that a 2+ with corrections? Yeah. Number 28.
Number 12 on the spreadsheet.
Well, so this is West Weaver Community Water District Diversion Improvement. This goes, I think, Bob, you had asked the question at the very beginning about can we fund NEPA?
Is this one of them?
We can.
Yeah, this is one I've got marked.
We and the RAC in the past has funded NEPA on some real high priority projects. The one that I recollect most vividly was the Mad Ridge fuels reduction project. We paid for the NEPA to get that done with a promise that they come back when it was done with proposals that were at least 50-50 for service, RAC funding for implementation. The pilot project, of the collaborative is one that got $50,000 in the last year. And there was a road project, I can't remember the name of the road, that we paid for NEPA. So that is something we have funded.
So my question on this one was, so list of known partnerships and stuff, it doesn't include the community services district. And it would seem like they would be the primary beneficiary, and they're not contributing any money either. So I would be asking how come the CSD isn't supporting it or committing some sort of, partnership to it or whatever.
They're not part of column C.
Well, they're not listed under other funding or under partnerships. They're not listed under either one.
I'm surprised this isn't in a pipe already, and I was curious. Typically, they lay plastic pipe in the ditches, so then when fire comes, it's going to do away with that. So I was curious what they're proposing to even do. Plastic covered with dirt.
It still burns.
Better under dirt than not under dirt.
I'd like to step back a little further. My own idea is they shouldn't even be using that darn diversion. They don't need that darn diversion, at least not for supply. And maybe it's a little cheaper than getting it out of the river, but it's more environmentally good to get it out of the river. And they shouldn't be using that ditch, and maybe we shouldn't be enabling them to use that ditch or encouraging them. That's kind of how I'm feeling.
I could certainly buy into that. I've had questions of how they're allowed to dry up East Weaver when they have the river available. And the answer is always it's cheaper to use gravity when it's there, but I'm amazed they're allowed to use it to the extent they do before they shut it off.
No, so they, they got to get, I don't like to enable unnecessary damaging practices. And this is an unnecessary damaging practice in my mind.
So is it lots of questions or a minus?
Lots of questions.
It's been there so long.
So
a complete absence of a star in my mind.
In response to Arnold's question, if the ditch is there, it's more efficient to have it be in a pipe, but you're saying the ditch shouldn't be being utilized at all. And I hear you.
Well,
right.
Well, I mean,
the
it's
ditch gets
the water
used.
rights too, right? And adjudicated water rights for the community. I don't know that we'd want to spend the money based on the new NEPA to put money at that. I mean, the old saying, what whiskey's for drinking and water's for fighting. So I don't know that. Just need further discussion and clarification for me to make a decision here. I mean, I want to throw money at something on a recent, the NEPA, I get what they're doing here and I understand that. I just need more clarification.
When they open the overflow for the Moonley ditch, it floods my yard. Well, I'll abstain from the vote on this.
Oh,
just for clarification.
No.
So Tara has a question.
Tara.
I just want to make sure this is a different ditch than the Howe ditch. Is that correct?
Yeah. Right. This is the Moonley ditch.
Thank you. Just wanted to make sure.
Community water ditch.
Moonley is West Weaver. Howe is East Weaver.
It crosses 299 on the west of town, west of every high school and everything.
And it comes out behind the Young Family Ranch and down at the Lee Ranch House.
In back of the cemetery.
Yeah, cemetery gets water from it.
Yeah, and I think Brian makes a good point here too, that we are looking at these proposals. We're not necessarily making recommendations on what they should do, right? So let's look at the proposals on their face, and it would be fun to have a room full of angry people at a Trendy Rack meeting. So
One of the questions
it always happens.
I have to deal with it is it possible that there are other people on the ditch that have water rights from the ditch?
Yeah.
Therefore, the ditch cannot be eliminated. Also, the ditch has been there long enough that it has produced its own environment.
Well,
and that may be also an issue in the NEPA.
It absolutely would.
Well, the places where it leaks, yeah, it's created wetlands.
No, well, it's just the ground soaks up water to begin with.
So a number of years ago, good chunks of it, after it's on the south side of Highway 299, had half ditch or half pipes put in to reduce the leakage. But some of the landowners balked at having that done. And so it was never completed. So I'm sure that's part of it. But I think, yeah, this is one we just need a more thorough understanding of before we
Well, like for instance, who are the beneficiaries? All of a sudden, we're not just talking about the water district, we're talking about a cemetery or Ross Molyneux. You know, it seems like a proposal ought to identify the beneficiaries and ought to discuss their cooperation in a proposal like this.
Mm-hmm.
Or their opposition,
right?
For all I know,
right.
I don't think we should give up water. You know, at this time, you know, water, it's going to become a bigger and bigger issue as we go on.
I'm not talking about, maybe so. I'm not talking about litigating anyone's water right. I'm talking about not contributing money to a thing that's damaging environmentally. Why should we be contributing and perpetuating a damaging practice? I don't get it.
Say that's what it is.
Okay, our last and final, number 29. West Side Trail Infrastructure and Community Involvement.
22.
22.
We could stop here and finish next time, right?
You guys want to go back and look at some of the other ones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I had the same comment I've had a couple of other times where when you look at task 5,
yep,
it begins to look like it is helping to pay for something that somebody else is asking us to help them pay for.
Mm-hmm.
There's some double dipping.
I have a similar question with just overall capacity. You know, if the other projects were funded, would there be capacity to ensure that everything across the board is implemented? And I was concerned about many different hands doing the same work and not enough communication.
Yeah, because they're talking about 15 miles of trails, 10 of which are going to be in the Weaver Basin Trail system. So is that covered somewhere else?
Yeah, is that covered under the one that we looked at?
No, it's
earlier?
not. It's a new trail that's being built at the top of the system. It's a downhill trail.
10 miles.
10 miles?
10 miles.
Hold on.
It connects with existing trails, so I don't know how many miles, but it could easily be 10 miles, yes.
Miles would be in Junction City.
If roads around here went in a straight line, yes.
So I think the strongest thing, the most clearly unique, is the approximately 4.5 miles of Ewing Reservoir trail, new trail construction that the NEPA just got done on.
Yeah.
I know I would strongly support it, at least that, if not.
Also, he's got trail maintenance, trail building days here, and beginning trail work maintenance for beginners, I should say. And all those things I think are a good thing.
Brenza.
So I have a question about the trail configuration. Where exactly is the trail being configured? Are they different trail somewhere? Like, are they just getting rid of a trail? What is that?
Sometimes trails are built by motorcyclists, and they tend to go straight up a mountain or straight down, you know, and those aren't sustainable trails because you don't want, the water will follow that in a straight down. It'll be a huge gully. And so those trails are being obliterated, and then new ones that don't take maintenance, you know, that wind themselves down or being replaced.
And I think there are cases where there's trails that go through meadows, you know, wet meadows and things that they're the ones when you go through them after a few years, you're walking up like, you know, the edge of the trails up to your knees, and they reroute those, you obliterate the old trail and build a new. Yeah.
I just want to make sure that we're not completely taking away access to a point that people want to access.
Right. I think some kind of coordination conversation with all these groups at our next meeting is going to be really key.
Intentionally send an email to everybody who, you know, to essentially the RCD, Watershed Center, and Ascend to say,
you guys need to like make sure you're coordinating on this trail stuff, because to us, it looks at least superficially like there's a lot of possible overlaps that could be eliminated, and just show the coordination.
Yeah, and not only the coordination, but what are the actual products? Because I'm still a little amorphous just seeing all of this.
Yeah.
What's going to be the end goal, and is there a better? I don't know. It's confusing to me at this point.
I think that the RCD and the watershed are all working together on some of these trails, especially on this downhill trail. And the guy who, I don't know if you've been on the Swayze trails, the guy that did those is working on it from the Reading.
Yeah, I'm totally good with the projects. I just need a clearer picture.
And and so you'll have a trail that it's not a downhill trail like you see on TV. It's a trail that goes downhill, you know. So you can ride 15 miles of trail and maybe end up at the brewery or someplace, you know, that you don't do any climbing on. And that's what some kind of, you know, riders are into.
Okay.
Whole new trails, and it maintains the same trails we've been reusing for a long time.
So we've come to the end of the book.
Good job, Pat.
I'd like to see more detail amongst all the people that are going to be playing on the trails as to what trails they're actually going to be working on.
So yeah, I think like a 1 star or lots of questions.
Yeah, we didn't do a rating.
Oh, we didn't do a rating on it. Is it a star?
I'm for 2 stars.
I'm for questions.
I'm for lots of questions.
One with questions, that the majority opinion.
Well, I think I'm the only one to spend all the meetings on trails. So
I don't think it's.
So I understand much more about it. Those are all good questions, but
let's start with questions.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's a spot in our agendas always for public comment. I would just comment, thank you for being here and letting us use your room, and we'll do it again next week.
Oh, certainly. This has been really educational.
Forenza. Sure.
So we don't have a quorum next week.
I would say we're going to have people coming and answering questions.
Okay.
But I would say, even if we couldn't vote for some reason to make the, you know, if we can get through all of this again, you know, I would try to see if the group that wasn't a quorum could come up with a strategy, a framework for approvals at a meeting where we have a quorum. Yes, Amelia.
So are we going to try to set a structure that each proposal, the RAC and the person get 5 minutes to discuss and move on? Or are we going to give them
think about how
as much time as they want? Or okay.
No, we're not going to have as much time as people want. And I really don't want, I will make it clear that, at least in my mind, I don't want presentations. I want question and answer the questions that we send them, and let us deliberate and do our business. So we'll be here every Monday.
So we probably won't have time to deliberate. I mean, probably just answer our questions, and then we're going to have a third meeting
December
to actually
13th
digest
meeting.
and
I think
rank.
so. Bob.
So are you going to invite proponents next time? And so they'll be out in those chairs?
They can be here or they can be on the screen. Yeah, Amelia.
As this was a public meeting and some of the proponents were in the meeting and have notes of what questions were asked, do we need to wait to disseminate questions until the official notes are ready? Or?
No, I was just, I took all, I was going to be the one to kind of type up the questions. One of them send them on.
Okay.
A lot of work.
But we can just, like, so the list that I have, I can just
start working on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
An unfair advantage.
No. I take, I'm a hunt and pecker, you know, as far as typing, so it takes a while.
You're not going to be out there shoveling snow?
What's that?
You're not going to be out there shoveling snow?
I'll probably be doing that too. But, you know,
So once again, Jill, thank you for hosting us and doing this, and thank you in advance for the next times around. And Amelia, thank you for the food, and everybody for your patience with me and my insistence on getting through the book at least one time. And for your thoughtful questions. I think we got a lot of really good stuff that we're going to fund. And then we'll get together again with new money in another few months, hopefully. And Tara, do you have any closing remarks?
I think it's an unfair advantage that I don't have snacks. I'm just saying that's this whole fed, virtual land is getting really old. So I was a little jealous every time you guys got up and went to the snack table.
Yeah, well, them's the breaks.
I'm gonna have to get some coffee next time because I've got you pegged now. We're pushing through and we're not stopping. You must be fun to travel with.
Yeah, that too.
Gonna find out.
So it seems like we should kind of be thinking about how to cut $500,000 out of this in the meantime.
I think we did.
I think, we can, some projects are just gone and some are multi-year, can maybe just be
1 year project.
Yeah.
And I mean, in case we got to some of that, I actually brought a calculator. Because I don't know how to do that on a phone. Okay, with that, everybody, thank you very much. I guess we are adjourned at 7:32 according to the official clock on the wall.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you, Lejean. Thank you, Tara. Thank you,
Did you
Ken.
officially adjourn us, Tara?
You are officially adjourned. Travel safely, and thank you so much. You guys did great work today.
I know.